True rebirth lies not in escaping death, but embracing it. Transformation isn't a singular event, but a continuous dance with endings. It's a process of shedding the old to reveal the new, a cycle as ancient as life itself. If death is truly only half the equation, what transformative potential lies unseen in our resistance to endings? For millennia, humanity has recognized this paradoxical dance, codifying it in initiation rituals and mythic tales of heroic transformation. From the Eleusinian mysteries, where initiates underwent experiences symbolizing death and resurrection to achieve spiritual awakening, to countless other rites of passage, the symbolic journey into darkness and back into the light has served as a cornerstone of spiritual and psychological growth. It was Carl Jung who illuminated the concept of the collective unconscious, a reservoir of universal experiences and archetypes, and Joseph Campbell who articulated the monomyth, the hero's journey, the common structural template found in heroic narratives across cultures. These frameworks highlight the heroic journey as a universal human quest for meaning, purpose, and wholeness. Consider the enduring tales of Gilgamesh, Odysseus, and Moses, their trials and tribulations resonating across cultures as testaments to this inherent human drive. Yet, in our modern world, a disconnect has emerged, one where we often prioritize external achievement over the crucial work of inner transformation. This imbalance leaves little space to acknowledge the subtle deaths we undergo daily, the loss of dreams, the end of relationships, the fading of youthful ideals, and the myriad ways our sense of self is challenged and reshaped. This ignorance of the inner world, this neglect of our personal death experiences, often leaves us feeling adrift, plagued by a sense of emptiness and alienation as we seek meaning in external validation, mistaking fleeting pleasures for lasting fulfillment. But what if we could consciously engage with this process of symbolic death and rebirth, not as passive victims of circumstance, but as active agents in our own evolution, cultivating personal growth, resilience, and a deeper connection to ourselves? How can we learn to see death not as an ending, but as a prelude to transformation, and use it as a tool for empowerment and integration? This video will embark on a journey into the archetypal roots of transformation, exploring the psychological dynamics of ego death, and offering practical strategies for integrating the shadow self, that disowned part of ourselves that holds both destructive and creative potential. The video will also showcase some mythological examples of ego death, and state that there is a pattern to be found throughout these tales, and the key to unlocking this universal pattern, as we will later see, will offer new meaning for the modern seeker. By engaging with this content, you'll not only gain intellectual understanding, but you'll also unlock practical tools for navigating life's challenges, unlocking hidden potential, and cultivating a deeper sense of meaning and purpose. Jung himself had a dream about rebirth and said that it's at the core of individuation, and this video will tie what Jung meant by that together. So, let's embark on this shared exploration of the archetypal roots of transformation together. The archetypal hero is a universal representation of the human potential for transformation and self-discovery. But what if we viewed the journey not as an external adventure, but as an inner process? The hero's journey can be seen as a symbolic map of the psyche, with each stage representing a different aspect of psychological development and the realization of the self. If the heroic journey is indeed a map, what do the landmarks represent in our own lives? What trials, dragons, mentors, and treasures await us on our path toward wholeness? To understand the deeper meaning of this map, we must first explore the psychological territory it represents. Carl Jung provided an intricate model of the psyche, comprising the ego, shadow, anima animus, and the self, each playing a crucial role during the transformation process. The ego, in this context, represents our conscious identity, the I that navigates the world, perceiving itself as distinct from others. Conversely, the shadow embodies the repressed or unacknowledged aspects of our personality, those traits, desires, and instincts we deem unacceptable or incompatible with our conscious self-image. These can be negative qualities, but also unrealized positive potentials. Then there's the anima in men and the animus in women, representing the contrasexual side of the psyche, the unconscious feminine aspect in a man and the unconscious masculine aspect in a woman, influencing their emotions, relationships, and creative potential. Finally, the self, the archetype of wholeness, representing the totality of the personality, conscious and unconscious, the goal of individuation. But what happens when the ego, our conscious sense of self, clings too tightly to its identity, resisting change and growth? This brings us to the concept of ego death, a necessary step in individuation, the relinquishing of old patterns and attachments to allow for the emergence of a more authentic self. When the ego identifies too strongly with external achievements or societal expectations, ego death becomes necessary to break free from those limitations. Ego death is not a literal death, but rather a symbolic one, a dismantling of the old self to make way for the new. It can be a painful and disorienting process, as it involves confronting our deepest fears and insecurities, questioning our values and beliefs, and letting go of what we thought defined us. But as Jung himself noted, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. This process of ego death often feels like a form of psychological annihilation, dissolving one's previous identity. But what emerges from this dissolution? Individuation, according to Jung, is the process of becoming a whole and integrated person, involving confronting and integrating the shadow self, and finding balance between masculine and feminine energies. It is a lifelong journey, not a destination, leading to greater self-awareness, authenticity, and meaning. Jung writes, individuation does not mean that the individual becomes perfect, harmonious, or good. It only means that he becomes whole. But what does this integration truly entail? It requires us to acknowledge and accept all aspects of ourselves, including the shadow. However, the shadow is not inherently evil, but rather a repository of untapped potential, creative energy waiting to be unleashed. As we'll discover, this integration is not about condoning harmful behavior, but about understanding and accepting our flaws and weaknesses, transforming them into strengths. This is a concept that they certainly don't want you to embrace, for it promises a more integrated existence. Throughout history, myths and stories have served as mirrors reflecting the human journey of transformation, and these tales of heroes have a recurring pattern of descent into the underworld, a dark forest, a personal crisis, followed by ascent, resurrection, enlightenment, self-discovery in these narratives. Consider the myth of Persephone, whose descent into the underworld and subsequent return demonstrates the cyclical nature of death and rebirth. Abducted by Hades, the god of the underworld, Persephone experiences a symbolic death, a severing from her former life as a carefree maiden. Her time in the underworld forces her to confront the darker aspects of existence, the realm of shadows, and the unconscious. Yet, her eventual return to the world of light brings with it a new understanding of life and death, a deeper connection to the cycles of nature. Then there's the story of the phoenix rising from the ashes, an enduring symbol of transformation. When the phoenix nears the end of its life cycle, it builds a nest of twigs and sets itself on fire, consumed by the flames. From these ashes, a new phoenix arises, reborn and renewed, representing the cyclical nature of death and rebirth. This myth is a powerful metaphor for our own ability to overcome adversity, to emerge from the ashes of our old selves transformed and strengthened. It highlights the potential for renewal that lies within even the most devastating experiences. Similarly, the trials of Hercules, the legendary Greek hero, demonstrate the transformative power of overcoming seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Hercules was tasked with completing 12 labors, each representing a different challenge or obstacle on the path to self-mastery. Throughout the Odyssey, there is much to learn about the journey. But what about in literature? Figures such as Hamlet and Dr. Faustus touch on this subject as well. These stories resonate with our own experiences of loss, change, and renewal, providing a framework for understanding the psychological significance of these events. They are not just fantastical tales, but rather symbolic representations of the inner journey we all undertake. Understanding these narratives can offer solace, inspiration, and guidance as we navigate our own challenges and transformations. The universal pattern, the key that they share, is that of enduring great difficulties that would fell most people. To summarize, the heroic journey is an archetypal pattern reflecting the process of individuation, involving ego death, shadow integration, and the emergence of a more authentic self. Understanding these concepts can provide valuable insights into our own personal journeys of transformation. And as we stated earlier, Jung himself had a dream about rebirth and said that it's at the core of individuation, and now we've come to better understand some of the concepts of what he meant. So, how can we consciously embrace the call to adventure in our own lives and navigate the challenges of ego death and shadow integration with courage and wisdom? In the next section, we will explore specific strategies for engaging with the shadow self and integrating it into our conscious awareness. Is the shadow self merely a repository of negative traits, or is it something more? It is perhaps the initial, and certainly the most formidable, adversary encountered on the heroic journey. But what if we reframe the shadow not just as a collection of undesirable characteristics, but as untapped potential, challenging the conventional view of good versus evil? For it is said that the less embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it becomes. Buried within the shadow are dormant talents and aspects of the personality waiting to be discovered. Consider the artistic abilities stifled by societal expectations, the repressed assertiveness that could lead to healthier boundaries, or the unacknowledged empathy that could deepen relationships. These are not inherently negative qualities, but rather potentials that have been denied expression, forced into the darkness of the unconscious. What if our greatest strengths are hidden within our darkest corners? The shadow possesses a dual nature, manifesting as both destructive impulses and creative energy. Jung viewed the shadow as the dark side of the ego, a repository of primitive instincts and socially unacceptable desires. But this dark side also contains the raw materials for transformation, the potential for intense creativity, profound empathy, and unwavering courage. Repressed anger, for instance, if properly channeled, can become a powerful catalyst for positive change and self-assertion, rather than destructive rage. Untamed passion can fuel artistic expression and innovation. Is it possible that our greatest gifts are intertwined with our most feared qualities? However, ignoring the shadow does not make it disappear. It amplifies its power. Unacknowledged aspects of the self begin to exert unconscious control over behavior, warping relationships and sabotaging goals. Consider a person who consistently sabotages romantic relationships due to a fear of intimacy, an unacknowledged aspect of their shadow. Their fear, repressed and unexamined, manifests as self-destructive behaviors, pushing away potential partners and reinforcing their belief that they are unworthy of love. How many opportunities are lost, how many relationships damaged by the unchecked influence of the shadow? We will later share some practical techniques of shadow integration, but the first step is confronting this inner dragon. To truly confront one's shadow, one must descend into the depths of the unconscious, a journey fraught with challenges and risks. Jung himself embarked on such a descent, documenting his experiences in the Red Book, a testament to his active confrontation with his inner world. What if we viewed Jung not just as a psychologist, but as an exemplar of the heroic journey, mapping the uncharted territories of the psyche? Jung actively confronted his shadow through active imagination, dream analysis, and intense self-reflection. His journey becomes the map, guiding us through the labyrinthine corridors of the unconscious. He engaged in a structured dialogue with the figures that emerged from his unconscious, figures like Philemon, a wise old man, and his anima, a feminine representation of his soul. These encounters shaped his understanding of the unconscious, revealing the hidden dynamics and archetypal forces that influence human behavior. Was Jung's willingness to face his inner demons the key to unlocking his profound insights? Active imagination, in the context of Jung's personal journey, is a structured dialogue with the unconscious, a method for bringing the shadow into conscious awareness. The goal is not to control the unconscious, but to engage with it, listening to its messages and integrating its insights into conscious life. This process requires a willingness to suspend judgment, to embrace the irrational, and to allow the unconscious to speak in its own language. The benefits include increased self-awareness, enhanced creativity, and a deeper connection to the wellspring of the psyche. But how can we embark on this journey without losing our way? Confronting the shadow is not without its challenges and risks. The potential for psychological distress is real, and the need for guidance and support is paramount. Jung cautioned against undertaking this process lightly, emphasizing that it is a delicate and potentially overwhelming experience. Cautionary tales abound from Jung's practice of patients who were overwhelmed by their encounters with the unconscious, patients who succumbed to the darkness and lost their way. Is it possible that some are simply not equipped to face their inner demons? This path is fraught with risk. Emphasizing the pattern of descent into the unconscious as a necessary step for self-discovery and transformation, we can view the metaphor of diving into the depths to confront one's inner demons. Like a pearl diver plunging into the ocean, we must be willing to face the unknown, to brave the depths of our own psyche, in order to retrieve the treasures that lie hidden within. But what happens when we surface? How do we integrate what we have found? Throughout mythology and literature, we find examples of heroic figures who successfully confronted and integrated their shadows, and those who were consumed by them. Consider Beowulf's battle with Grendel, a symbolic representation of the hero confronting his shadow. Beowulf, the embodiment of courage and strength, faces Grendel, a monstrous figure representing the dark, untamed aspects of human nature. The battle is not just a physical one, but a psychological one, a struggle for control between the conscious and unconscious. Does Beowulf's victory represent the triumph of order over chaos, or the integration of both? Compare and contrast Gollum and Frodo from Lord of the Rings to emphasize this same point. Frodo resists the power of the ring and ultimately succeeds in destroying it, despite the ring's temptations. Gollum, on the other hand, succumbs to the ring's power, becoming a twisted and corrupted version of his former self. Frodo's resilience demonstrates the potential for integrating the shadow, while Gollum's downfall serves as a cautionary tale of what happens when the shadow is allowed to consume the individual. How does this comparison enhance our understanding of these two characters? We see a recurring pattern of successful shadow integration: acknowledgement, understanding, acceptance, and integration. These figures demonstrate specific strategies for facing their inner demons. Heroes often transform their weaknesses into strengths by embracing their shadow aspects, such as a warrior learning to control their rage, or a wise man integrating their capacity for deceit. This universal pattern of integration involves first acknowledging the existence of the shadow, then understanding its origins and motivations, accepting its presence without judgment, and finally integrating its energies into the conscious self. What is the key to unlocking this pattern? However, we must also consider the counter-examples of figures who were consumed by their shadows, characters who succumb to their darker impulses and suffer tragic consequences. Anakin Skywalker from Star Wars serves as an example, tracing his descent into Darth Vader as a result of his inability to confront his fear and anger. His fear of loss and his desire for power lead him down a dark path, ultimately transforming him into the very thing he sought to destroy. His inability to integrate his shadow leads to his destruction and the suffering of those around him. What is the road to hell paved with? Each choice leads to a different path, Therefore, each choice determines our destiny. By choosing to consciously confront our shadow, we can move toward wholeness and integration. By ignoring it, we risk being consumed by its darkness, perpetuating a cycle of suffering and destruction. How can we consciously choose the path of integration over consumption? Later in the video, we will share strategies for making this conscious choice. It's not just about avoiding negative emotions. It's about realizing your full potential. The stakes are high when it comes to ignoring the shadow. Those unable to confront shadow aspects often project them onto others, leading to conflict and misunderstanding. This projection manifests as unwarranted accusations, unfounded suspicions, and distorted perceptions of reality. How much of the conflict in our world stems from our inability to face our inner demons? Integrating the shadow is a crucial step in becoming a whole and integrated person. By facing and integrating the shadow, we can move toward greater self-acceptance, authenticity, and compassion for ourselves and others. This process allows us to reclaim the disowned parts of ourselves, integrating them into our conscious awareness and harnessing their energy for positive growth. But how can we move beyond intellectual understanding and begin the practical work of integration? That is something we will show later in this video by discussing journaling, dream analysis, and active imagination. This heroic journey is a path of individuation. The quest for self-discovery is a lifelong endeavor that requires courage, perseverance, and a willingness to confront one's inner demons. It's not just about dealing with darkness, it's about moving toward the light, actualizing our full potential, and becoming the heroes of our own stories. What awaits those who take up this challenge? We will discover the answer together as we show that the journey of individuation is the hero's path to actualizing full potential. XIII. Practical Alchemy. Turning Shadow into Gold. Part 1. Having traversed the landscape of the shadow, understanding its dual nature and its pervasive influence, how do we begin the practical work of integrating this often feared aspect of ourselves? Is it enough to simply acknowledge its existence, or must we actively engage with it to unlock its hidden potential? One of the most accessible and often overlooked tools for self-excavation is the practice of journaling. However, this is not the diary keeping of adolescence, but a structured, intentional method for unearthing the hidden aspects of the self. Journaling, when approached with intention, becomes a potent alchemical vessel, a crucible in which we can safely explore the darker aspects of our psyche. This is not about merely venting emotions or recording daily events, but about actively mining the unconscious for the raw materials of transformation. Consider it a form of active meditation, a way to bypass the ego's defenses and access the deeper currents of the psyche. The process involves free writing, allowing thoughts and feelings to flow without censorship, followed by mindful reflection to identify recurring themes, patterns, and emotional triggers. Is it possible that the simple act of writing can unlock the secrets of the unconscious? To initiate this process, consider using specific journaling prompts designed to elicit shadow material. For instance, ask yourself, what qualities do you most despise in others? The traits that trigger our strongest reactions in others often reflect disowned aspects of ourselves. What we loathe in others, we often loathe in ourselves. Another potent prompt is, what are your recurring negative thought patterns? These patterns often reveal core beliefs and insecurities that drive our behavior. What are the stories you tell yourself about why you are not good enough, and how do these stories limit your potential? What are your recurring negative thought patterns? However, there are potential pitfalls to avoid on this journey of self-discovery. One common mistake is intellectualizing the shadow, analyzing it from a detached perspective without truly feeling it. It's easy to dissect our shadow aspects with clinical precision, but genuine integration requires emotional engagement. Another pitfall is falling into self-judgment, condemning ourselves for our perceived flaws and weaknesses. The goal is not to eradicate the shadow, but to understand and integrate it with self-compassion. How can we strike a balance between intellectual understanding and emotional engagement? Like the hero's descent into the underworld, this process can be difficult and emotionally taxing. Confronting our shadow aspects can trigger feelings of shame, guilt, and fear. It requires courage to face the parts of ourselves we have disowned or rejected. However, this descent is ultimately necessary for growth. Only by confronting our inner demons can we reclaim our disowned potential and move toward wholeness. Consider the myth of Persephone, whose descent into the underworld allowed her to become a queen, co-ruling with Hades and understanding the cycles of life and death. Is it possible that our deepest wounds hold the key to our greatest power? Connecting journaling to the broader theme of death and rebirth, we can see how confronting and acknowledging shadow aspects can lead to the death of old self-perceptions and the rebirth of a more authentic identity. What dies is not the self, but the limited, constricted version of the self that has been shaped by fear and denial. What is born is a more integrated, resilient, and compassionate self, capable of embracing both light and darkness. However, journaling is only one tool. How else might we unlock the unconscious? XIV. Decoding the unconscious. Dream analysis as a hero's quest. Part 1. Beyond the conscious exploration of the self through journaling, we can turn to the nocturnal realm of dreams, which Jung considered the royal road to the unconscious. Are dreams merely random firings of neurons, or are they symbolic messages from the unconscious mind, offering guidance and insight into our deepest selves? Reframe dreams not as random noise, but as symbolic messages from the unconscious mind, specifically about the shadow. Relate this to Jung's own dream from the introduction. The unconscious often speaks to us in symbols, metaphors, and narratives that defy logical understanding. Dreams provide a stage for the shadow to express itself, revealing hidden desires, fears, and conflicts that we may not be consciously aware of. Consider Jung's own dreams, which were often filled with archetypal figures and symbolic landscapes that reflected his own inner struggles. What can we learn from these nocturnal narratives? Jung's dream about rebirth that we mentioned earlier in this video is at the core of individuation. But what did he mean? To begin to decode the unconscious, we must first understand the basics of Jungian dream interpretation. This involves looking for recurring symbols, identifying the dreamer's emotional response to the dream, and exploring the dream's potential meaning in the context of the dreamer's life. Unlike Freudian dream analysis, which primarily focuses on repressed sexual desires, Jungian dream analysis emphasizes wholeness and individuation. The goal is not to reduce the dream to a single, definitive interpretation, but to explore its potential meanings and integrate its insights into conscious life. Consider the recurring dream of being chased. What might that represent about one's shadow? Common dream symbols associated with the shadow include monsters, dark figures, abandoned places, and chaotic events. These symbols often represent disowned aspects of ourselves that we fear or reject. The emotional tone of the dream can provide further clues. Were you afraid, anxious, or angry? These emotions can point to unresolved conflicts or repressed desires related to the shadow. However, it's important to remember that dream interpretation is subjective and requires careful consideration of the dreamer's personal history and experiences. How can we begin to analyze our own dreams for shadow content? To analyze a dream for shadow content, begin by recording the dream in as much detail as possible. Capture the setting, the characters, the events, and your emotional response. Next, identify the key symbols and emotional themes. What stands out to you? What feels significant or disturbing? Then, explore the potential meaning of these symbols and themes in the context of your life. What aspects of yourself might these symbols represent? What conflicts or desires might they be pointing to? Finally, reflect on how the dream might be guiding you toward greater self-awareness and integration. This is a guide for the journey. Consider a dream about being chased through a dark forest by a shadowy figure. The forest might represent the unconscious, the shadowy figure the disowned aspects of the self, and the act of being chased the fear of confronting these aspects. The dreamer might feel anxiety and terror, reflecting their resistance to acknowledging their shadow. However, by exploring the dream's symbolism and emotional tone, the dreamer can begin to understand what aspects of themselves they are running from and why. What would it mean to turn and face the shadowy figure? Keeping a dream journal can be invaluable for tracking recurring patterns and themes over time, as well as providing a great framework for shadow integration. Just as with journaling, it becomes a record of the alchemical process of transformation. Recurring dreams often point to unresolved conflicts or recurring patterns in our lives. By paying attention to these patterns, we can gain deeper insights into our unconscious and identify areas where we need to focus our attention. By recording and analyzing our dreams, we begin to illuminate the dark corners of our psyche, bringing the shadow into conscious awareness. What can we see reflected in these mythic mirrors? XV. Mythic mirrors, shadow archetypes in story and culture beyond the personal realms of journaling and dream analysis. We can connect shadow integration to broader cultural narratives by examining how shadow archetypes appear in mythology, literature, and film. Are these stories simply entertainment, or do they reflect deeper psychological truths about the human condition? Let's explore some of the potential gold that can be mined in mythic mirrors. One prominent shadow archetype is the trickster, a figure who disrupts the established order and challenges conventional norms. Figures such as Loki in Norse mythology or Coyote in Native American folklore embody this archetype. The trickster is not necessarily evil, but rather amoral, driven by their own desires and impulses, often challenging the status quo. The trickster represents the shadow's disruptive and chaotic energy. Is the trickster merely a troublemaker, or do they serve a valuable function in society? Consider the character of Loki, the Norse god of mischief. Loki is a master of disguise, deception, and manipulation. He is constantly playing pranks on the other gods, causing chaos and disruption wherever he goes. However, Loki also plays a crucial role in many important events in Norse mythology, often acting as a catalyst for change and innovation. His disruptive energy forces the other gods to confront their own limitations and vulnerabilities. What does Loki's chaotic energy reveal about the shadow's potential for both destruction and creation? Another example of the shadow archetype is the doppelganger, a person's evil twin. This figure often appears in literature as a symbol of the shadow self that is threatening to take over the ego. Consider Robert Louis Stevenson's strange DRSE of Dr. Jekyll and Dr. Hyde, where Dr. Jekyll's repressed dark side manifests as the monstrous Mr. Hyde. Hyde represents all the aspects of Jekyll that he has denied and suppressed, and his growing power threatens to consume Jekyll entirely. What does this story reveal about the dangers of repressing the shadow? In Norse mythology, the gods are constantly battling giants and monsters, which are externalizations of the shadow elements of the collective unconscious. These beings represent the untamed forces of nature, the primitive instincts, and the destructive impulses that lurk beneath the surface of civilization. The gods' struggle against these forces symbolizes the ongoing effort to maintain order and control in the face of chaos and darkness. However, what would the gods be without the giants? Society often projects the shadow onto marginalized groups or scapegoats, blaming them for societal problems and failures. This projection allows us to avoid confronting our own shadow aspects, creating an us versus them mentality that fuels prejudice and discrimination. Consider how certain groups are often demonized and blamed for economic woes, political unrest, or moral decline. This projection allows us to disown our own negative qualities, seeing them as existing solely in the other. Is it easier to hate someone else than to face our own flaws? This projection of the shadow onto marginalized groups is related to the earlier discussion of the collective shadow, explaining how this projection can lead to prejudice, discrimination, and even violence. The Holocaust, for instance, was a horrific example of the collective shadow being projected onto an entire group of people, resulting in unspeakable atrocities. By recognizing our own shadow aspects, we can begin to dismantle these destructive projections and create a more just and compassionate society. Can we truly create a better world without confronting our collective darkness? There is an overarching pattern in these archetypes. What the hero fears is often the source of the hero's untapped power. What we loathe, we tend to love. Loki's disruptive energy, while chaotic, is also a catalyst for change and innovation. Hyde's unrestrained impulses reveal the potential for passion and vitality that Jekyll has suppressed. The giant's untamed forces remind the guards of their own limitations and vulnerabilities. By embracing these shadow aspects, the hero can unlock their hidden potential and achieve greater wholeness. This pattern of fear and transformation is at the heart of the heroic journey. XVI. Synthesis and foreshadowing. Embracing the inner dragon in essence, journaling and dream analysis are valuable tools for bringing the shadow into conscious awareness, and recognizing shadow archetypes in myth and culture can help us to understand our own inner darkness. By exploring these different avenues, we can begin to map the contours of our inner landscape, identifying the hidden valleys, treacherous peaks, and unexplored territories that make up our shadow. What have we discovered about the shadow so far? Understanding how to integrate the shadow is essential for personal growth, authenticity, and wholeness. It allows us to reclaim the disowned parts of ourselves, integrate them into our conscious awareness, and harness their energy for positive change. The stakes are high, the reward great, but how do we actively engage with the shadow once we have identified it? And what role does active imagination play in this process? The next section will explore the practice of active imagination as a powerful technique for transforming the shadow, moving beyond passive observation to active engagement. This is where the alchemical process truly begins, as we learn to transmute the base metal of the shadow into the gold of consciousness. We're just scratching the surface of individuation, and we'll see what Jung really meant in his dream. What lies on the other side? However, this process is not without its challenges. Active imagination requires courage, patience, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. It demands that we suspend our judgment, embrace the irrational, and allow the unconscious to speak in its own language. Yet, while shadow work is essential, one of the keys to individuation is to not wallow in it. It's a launch pad, not a prison. How far are we willing to go? XVI. Active imagination. A dialogue with the unconscious. Part 2, having unearthed the shadow through journaling and dream analysis, and recognized its reflections in mythic mirrors. Is it enough to simply observe this inner darkness, or must we actively engage with it to unlock its transformative power? Active imagination, as developed by Jung, is not merely a passive technique, but a potent alchemical process, a crucible where the conscious mind can engage directly with the unconscious. Think of it as entering a liminal space, a bridge between the waking world and the realm of dreams, where you can converse with the figures that emerge from the depths of your psyche. But how does one actively engage in this inner dialogue? To practice active imagination, find a quiet space where you can be free from distractions. Close your eyes, relax your body, and allow your mind to drift into a receptive state, hovering between waking and sleeping. Visualize a scene, perhaps a landscape that feels significant to you, or a figure that has emerged from your dreams. Now, instead of simply observing this scene, actively engage with it. Speak to the figures that appear, ask them questions, and listen to their responses. Allow the dialogue to unfold spontaneously without censoring or judging the content. Remember, the conscious mind is listening, not directing. But isn't this just fantasy? The key to active imagination is allowing the unconscious to speak without censorship from the ego. This means resisting the temptation to control the narrative, to force the figures to say or do what you want them to. The conscious mind must adopt a posture of humble receptivity, allowing the unconscious to guide the process. This can be challenging, as the ego naturally seeks to maintain control. However, true self-discovery requires relinquishing this control and trusting the wisdom of the unconscious. But is it safe to trust the unconscious? There are ethical considerations to bear in mind when engaging in active imagination. It's imperative to resist the temptation to manipulate the unconscious for selfish gain, to use it to fulfill egoic desires, or to exert power over others. Active imagination is a partnership, not a dictatorship. The unconscious is not a servant to be commanded, but a source of wisdom to be consulted with respect and humility. Just as a responsible leader consults with advisors before making decisions, so too must the ego consult with the unconscious before taking action in the world. Is it possible that our dreams are a direct line to the divine? The path of active imagination is not without its challenges. It can be daunting to confront the unknown, to face the raw, unfiltered energy of the unconscious. The ego may resist, erecting defenses to protect itself from disturbing or overwhelming imagery. You may encounter figures that frighten or confuse you, scenes that evoke intense emotions. Persistence and self-compassion are key. It is vital to normalize these difficult parts, recognizing that they are a natural part of the process. How can we manage these challenges without becoming overwhelmed? Strategies for managing these challenges include grounding techniques, such as focusing on your breath or connecting with your physical surroundings. Seeking guidance from a therapist or experienced practitioner can also provide valuable support. And of course, it is always permissible to take breaks when needed, to step away from the process and return to it when you feel more grounded. The important thing is to approach active imagination with courage, patience, and a willingness to embrace the unknown. After all, haven't heroes always had to face the unknown? Active imagination is inextricably linked to the broader theme of death and rebirth. The willingness to let go of old identities, to surrender to the unknown, is essential for transformation. As we confront the figures and scenes that emerge from the unconscious, we are in effect confronting our own inner demons, facing the aspects of ourselves that we have disowned or rejected. By embracing these aspects, we allow them to die in their old form and be reborn as integrated parts of our being. This relates directly to Jung's dream of rebirth, which we introduced at the beginning of this video. Only through confronting our inner darkness can we truly embrace our full potential. But what happens when we turn inward? XVII. The inner marriage, animus and anima, part 1, having navigated the depths of the shadow and learned to engage with it through active imagination, what awaits us on the path to wholeness? Beyond the shadow lies another layer of complexity, another set of archetypes that must be integrated, the animus and anima. These contrasexual archetypes, present within the unconscious of both men and women, represent the inner masculine and feminine principles, respectively. But what exactly are the animus and anima? The anima, in Jungian psychology, is the unconscious feminine side of a man, representing his emotions, moods, intuition, and capacity for relationship. It is often personified in dreams and fantasies as a woman who can appear in various forms, from a nurturing mother to a seductive temptress. The animus, conversely, is the unconscious masculine side of a woman, representing her assertiveness, rationality, and capacity for action. Like the anima, the animus can appear in various forms, from a wise mentor to a tyrannical dictator. These are not simply opposite sex characteristics, but what role do these inner figures play in our lives? The anima and animus serve as mediators between the ego and the unconscious, acting as bridges between the conscious and unconscious realms. They are also sources of creativity and intuition, providing access to a deeper well of wisdom and insight. Furthermore, the anima and animus serve as guides toward wholeness, helping us to integrate our disowned masculine and feminine qualities and become more complete individuals. However, What happens when these inner figures remain unintegrated? Consider a man whose anima is underdeveloped. He may have difficulty expressing his emotions, connecting with his feminine side, and forming intimate relationships. He may be overly rational, detached, and emotionally unavailable. This is not a gender problem, but a suppression problem, a failure to embrace the full spectrum of his inner being. Conversely, a woman with an underdeveloped animus may struggle to assert herself, make decisions, and take action in the world. She may be overly passive, indecisive, and dependent on others. These are the pitfalls of the unintegrated animus and anima. Unintegrated animus and anima can also lead to projection onto others, resulting in unrealistic expectations in relationships. A man may project his anima onto a woman, expecting her to fulfill all his emotional needs and provide him with unconditional love. When she inevitably fails to meet these unrealistic expectations, he may become disappointed, resentful, and even abusive. Similarly, a woman may project her animus onto a man, expecting him to be strong, decisive, and always in control. When he shows vulnerability or uncertainty, she may become critical, dismissive, and even emasculating. But what are the internal ramifications? A woman with an unintegrated animus may be overly critical of herself and others, constantly striving for an unattainable ideal of perfection. She may judge herself harshly for any perceived flaws or weaknesses, driving herself relentlessly to achieve more and more. This can lead to burnout, exhaustion, and a deep sense of dissatisfaction, as she never feels good enough. These internal conflicts can sabotage personal growth and prevent us from achieving our full potential. But is it possible to integrate these inner figures? The integration of the animus and anima is essential for achieving balance and wholeness, setting the stage for true transformation on the heroic journey. By embracing our inner masculine and feminine qualities, we can become more complete, resilient, and authentic individuals. This integration allows us to move beyond rigid gender roles and embrace the full spectrum of human experience, unlocking our creative potential and deepening our capacity for relationship. What must be faced on the path to individuation? XIX. Cultivating inner harmony, animus and anima, Part 2, having understood the nature and function of the animus and anima and recognized the potential pitfalls of their unintegration. How do we begin the practical work of cultivating inner harmony between these inner figures? Are we doomed to forever project these qualities onto others, or can we learn to embrace them within ourselves? Practical integration can be achieved by engaging in creative activities. What would that look like? Creative activities, such as painting, writing, and music, can provide a safe and expressive outlet for exploring our relationship with our animus and anima. By engaging in these activities, we can give voice to our inner masculine and feminine qualities, allowing them to express themselves freely and spontaneously. This can lead to greater self-awareness, emotional release, and a deeper understanding of our inner landscape. But can something as simple as journaling unlock keys to our soul? Journaling, as discussed earlier in this video, can also be used to explore one's relationship with their animus or anima. Through journaling prompts, one can identify recurring patterns, emotional triggers, and unmet needs. Consider prompts like, what qualities do you admire in men/women? Or, what are your fears about expressing your masculine-feminine side? These questions can serve as a starting point for a deeper exploration of your inner world. However, can the exterior world aid in this process? It's important to challenge societal stereotypes and expectations that limit the expression of one's inner masculine and feminine qualities. Society often imposes rigid gender roles, dictating how men and women should behave, feel, and express themselves. These stereotypes can stifle our inner development and prevent us from embracing our full potential. Therefore, breaking free from expectations is vital for integration. How can we challenge these imposed expectations? For example, a man may need to challenge the societal expectation that he must always be strong and stoic in order to connect with his anima and embrace his vulnerability. He may need to give himself permission to express his emotions, to be gentle and nurturing, and to connect with his intuition. Similarly, a woman may need to challenge the societal expectation that she must always be passive and nurturing in order to connect with her animus and embrace her assertiveness. She may need to give herself permission to be assertive, to take charge, and to pursue her ambitions with passion. But what are the real-world benefits of this integration? The transformative potential of integrating the animus and anima is immense, offering greater self-acceptance, enhanced creativity, improved relationships, and a deeper sense of meaning and purpose. By embracing our inner masculine and feminine qualities, we can become more whole, balanced, and authentic individuals, unlocking our full creative potential and deepening our capacity for love and connection. Think again of the recurring mythic theme of the integration of male and female energies. What does this mean for us? By integrating the animus and anima, we move beyond rigid gender roles and embrace the full spectrum of human experience. This allows us to relate to others with greater empathy and understanding, fostering healthier and more fulfilling relationships. It also allows us to tap into our creative potential as we unlock the full range of our inner resources and express ourselves more authentically in the world. Ultimately, this integration leads to a deeper sense of meaning and purpose as we align ourselves with our true selves and live in accordance with our values. What can we expect on the path to integration? XX. The emerging self. Integration is inevitable as we've journeyed through the realms of the shadow, active imagination, and the animus anima. A pattern begins to emerge. The heroic journey is not about eliminating the shadow or suppressing our inner masculine or feminine qualities, but about integrating these aspects into a more complete sense of self. As Jung writes, the shadow is a living part of the personality and therefore wants to live with it in some way. You don't get rid of anything, so what do? This integration is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process of self-discovery and growth. It requires courage, patience, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves. But the rewards are immeasurable, leading to greater self-acceptance, authenticity, and wholeness. The question is, how can we take these concrete steps? Active imagination serves as a safe space to face the shadow, explore the animus and anima, and integrate these previously disowned aspects of ourselves. Through this process, we learn to accept ourselves fully, flaws and all, recognizing that our imperfections are not liabilities, but rather sources of strength and resilience. Think of it again as the phoenix rising from the ashes. Embracing previously unwanted parts of the self is the key to unlocking the authentic self. By confronting the darkness, we emerge stronger, wiser, and more complete. But is there a way to ensure success? By integrating the shadow and engaging with our inner selves, we are taking concrete steps toward achieving wholeness. The goal is not to become perfect, but to become whole, to embrace all aspects of ourselves, both light and dark. By doing so, we unlock our full potential and live more authentically in the world, just as we promised to share some practical shadow integration techniques. The key to unlocking your authentic self rests in your shadow. As Jung said about his own shadow, I had to accept my own nature such as it was. So, what about the final form? As we've seen, Jung had a dream about rebirth that is at the core of individuation. That dream can be brought full circle by integrating all aspects of the psyche shadow, animus, anima, conscious and unconscious, as the journey toward the self. What Jung meant in his dream is the reconciliation of the conscious with the unconscious. The self, in Jungian psychology, represents the totality of the psyche, the integration of all aspects of the personality. But what is the place of the self in the universe? In the next and final section of this video, we will explore the archetype of the self as the ultimate destination of the heroic journey. We will delve into its place in the universe and what it really means. Get ready to take the final leap to the far side of knowing. XXI. The self, the center of the psyche and goal of individuation, having faced the shadow, integrated the animus and anima, and engaged in the alchemical process of active imagination, one might ask, is there a final destination on this heroic journey, a culmination of all this effort? The answer, in Jungian psychology, lies in the archetype of the self. However, it is important to note that the self is not synonymous with the ego, that center of our conscious identity that strives for individual achievement and recognition. The self is something far grander, more encompassing, and often misunderstood as an inflated ego. If the ego strives for individual achievement, what then is the self striving for? What is it doing? Is it merely about personal aggrandizement, about achieving some idealized version of oneself? Or does it encompass something larger, something that transcends the individual ego and connects us to a greater whole? Is the self solely focused on the individual, or does it extend outwards, embracing a more expansive understanding of existence? In the vast, ever-changing landscape of the psyche, the self is both the North Star and the compass, a guiding principle and an orienting force that leads us toward wholeness and integration. XXII. Characteristics of the self. Totality, unity, and the luminous whole. The self, as described by Jung, is the archetype of totality, representing the complete and harmonious union of conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche. It is the center of the psyche, the axis mundi, the center of the world, around which all other archetypes and psychic functions revolve, giving them order and purpose. The self is also the archetype of meaning, providing a sense of purpose and direction in life, guiding us toward our unique potential. The relationship between the self and the other archetypes is crucial to understanding the individuation process. The self includes the shadow, the anima animus, and the ego, not negating them, but integrating them into a unified whole. Just as a skilled conductor brings together the various instruments of an orchestra to create a harmonious symphony, so too does the self integrate the different aspects of the psyche to create a complete and balanced personality. This provides the hero with the opportunity to become whole, embracing all aspects of their being, both light and dark. It is vital to differentiate between the realization of the self and identification with the self, which can lead to ego inflation. The realization of the self involves recognizing its existence as the center of the psyche and striving to align oneself with its principles. Identification with the self, on the other hand, involves falsely believing that one is the self, leading to a sense of grandiosity, arrogance, and a disconnection from reality. This distinction requires recognizing that the self is not the same as perfection, and that the path to individuation involves humility, self-awareness, and a willingness to confront one's limitations. And since it's not possible to eliminate the shadow, the self makes use of it, turning potential liabilities into strengths. XXII. Embodying the self. Mythic and real-life examples of wholeness throughout mythology and religion, there are figures who embody the archetype of the self, demonstrating wholeness and a capacity for unconditional love and acceptance. Consider the figure of Christ, often seen as a representation of the self, highlighting his capacity for compassion, forgiveness, and self-sacrifice. He faced his shadow, confronting temptation in the desert, and ultimately sacrificing himself for the good of humanity. His example demonstrates the power of the self to transcend personal limitations and act in service to others. Consider also the figure of Buddha, specifically how he faced Mara, the demon representing the shadow self, before achieving enlightenment. By acknowledging and integrating his own inner demons, Buddha was able to attain a state of complete peace and understanding, embodying the wholeness and unity of the self. These figures demonstrate that the path to the self is not about avoiding darkness, but about confronting it and integrating it into one's being. However, these examples can feel lofty and unattainable, so it's important to examine real-life examples of individuals who have demonstrated qualities of the self, providing a more grounded analysis. Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, and even Carl Jung himself all faced immense struggles and challenges on their paths to wholeness. They were not perfect individuals, but they demonstrated a capacity for compassion, forgiveness, and a commitment to ethical action that reflected the principles of the self. Mandela's ability to forgive his oppressors after decades of imprisonment, Gandhi's unwavering commitment to non-violent resistance, and Jung's relentless exploration of the human psyche all exemplify the qualities of the self in action. It's important to remember that the path to wholeness is not without its obstacles, but that these obstacles can serve as opportunities for growth and transformation. Ultimately, the importance of ethical action and social responsibility as expressions of the self cannot be overstated, emphasizing that individuation is not a selfish pursuit, but a path toward greater service to humanity. XXIV. Synthesis and transition. The journey's end and a new beginning. In summary, the self is the ultimate goal of individuation, representing wholeness, unity, and meaning. It is not about perfection, but about integration, understanding, and compassion. Pursuing the self is a path toward greater self-awareness, authenticity, and connection to something larger than oneself, fulfilling Jung's dream about rebirth and illuminating its significance at the core of individuation. And returning to our earlier open story loop, the myths of ego death that we've explored find their complement in the myths of figures who have embodied the self, revealing the key that what they feared their shadow, their inner demons they ultimately embraced, making it a part of themselves. But what is the relationship between the self and the universe? Does the journey of individuation end with the individual, or does it extend outward into the cosmos? This understanding is not the end of the story. As we prepare to enter the final stretch of our discussion, we will explore the connection between the self and the cosmos, framing individuation as a microcosm of the universe's ongoing process of creation and transformation. XXV. The cosmic mirror. Self as microcosm, we have arrived at the self, the ultimate goal of individuation, the center of the psyche. But if the self is the center of the individual psyche, we must ask, what larger whole does the self reflect? To what extent does the individual mirror the universal? To approach this question, it's helpful to distinguish between the terms universe and cosmos. The term universe, as used in modern science, generally refers to the totality of existence, all matter, energy, space, and time. However, cosmos, derived from the Greek word for order, implies not merely existence, but a meaningful arrangement. The cosmos embodies beauty and harmony, a structured whole, while the universe may simply be, as some modern thinkers propose, the product of blind chance. If the self represents wholeness within the individual, is the journey of individuation simply a personal quest, or is it also a reflection of a universal process? Does the small align with the large? Are the patterns we find within ourselves mirrored in the world around us? Just as the self integrates the diverse and even contradictory elements of the psyche's shadow, anima animus, ego so too. As we shall see, it mirrors the interconnectedness of the cosmos, suggesting that our inner journey is but a microcosm of a larger, universal drama. This mirroring suggests that there is a deeper order at play, a hidden harmony that connects the individual to the cosmos. XXVI. Synchronicity. Bridging the inner and outer worlds, this brings us to Jung's concept of synchronicity, a concept that attempts to explain this deeper order, this hidden harmony. Synchronicity, as Jung defined it, is the occurrence of a meaningful coincidence, a linking of inner psychological states with external events in a way that seems beyond mere chance. It is an acausal connecting principle, a bridge between the subjective realm of the psyche and the objective world of external reality. It suggests that there is a deeper, underlying order at play, an interconnectedness that transcends the limitations of cause and effect. One of the most famous examples of synchronicity in Jung's own life is the story of the scarab beetle. Jung was working with a patient who was highly rational and resistant to psychological insights. During one session, as the patient was recounting a dream, a scarab beetle, a symbol of rebirth in ancient Egyptian mythology, flew into the room and began buzzing around. Jung saw this as a synchronistic event, a meaningful coincidence that mirrored the patient's psychological state and helped to break through her resistance. As Jung writes, "In each case, I have found that the symbolic expression helps the patient to understand what is happening to him." It was at this moment that he understood how inner psychological states can be mirrored by external events. But are synchronicities simply random chance occurrences, or are they manifestations of a deeper, underlying order that connects all things? How are we to distinguish synchronicity from simple coincidence? The key lies in the element of meaning. Synchronistic events are not simply coincidental. They carry a sense of relevance, a feeling of being personally addressed by the universe. They often occur at moments of great emotional intensity or psychological insight, as if the universe is conspiring to validate our inner experiences. However, perceiving synchronicities is not always easy. It often requires a shift in perspective, a willingness to move beyond rational analysis and embrace intuitive understanding. It means noticing what is present, rather than dismissing it as mere chance. As such, it is a heroic choice whether to view these events as accidents or profound communications from the unconscious, urging us to pay attention to the deeper currents of our lives. XXVII. The collective unconscious. A tapestry of shared experience, the concept of synchronicity leads us directly to Jung's theory of the collective unconscious. This vast, shared reservoir of archetypes, symbols, and universal experiences connects all human beings to each other and to the cosmos. It is a tapestry woven from the threads of our shared history, a repository of primordial images and patterns that shape our perceptions, emotions, and behaviors. Our individual psyches are not isolated islands, but rather part of a larger, interconnected network of consciousness. The collective unconscious acts as a bridge, linking us to the wisdom of our ancestors and the collective experiences of humanity. Recurring archetypal themes in mythology, religion, and art provide evidence of the collective unconscious and its influence on human experience. The prevalence of the Great Mother archetype in diverse cultures, for example, reflects a universal human experience of nurturing and connection. The hero's journey, the shadow figure, the wise old man, these archetypes appear again and again in different cultures, suggesting that they are not simply cultural constructs, but rather reflections of fundamental patterns within the human psyche. What are the implications of the collective unconscious for our understanding of human nature? It suggests that we are all interconnected, that our individual experiences are shaped by a larger, shared reality. It emphasizes the importance of recognizing our shared humanity and interconnectedness, of moving beyond the illusion of separation and embracing our collective identity. However, there is a price to pay for clinging to the illusion of absolute individuality, isolation, alienation, and a sense of meaninglessness. Embracing the reality of the collective unconscious, on the other hand, means participating in a deeper, more meaningful existence, connecting to the wisdom of the ages, and contributing to the ongoing evolution of human consciousness. XXVII. The cosmos within. Realigning with the universal order. In summary, the self mirrors the cosmos, reflecting its inherent order and interconnectedness. Synchronicity reveals the subtle but powerful connections between our inner psychological states and the external world. The collective unconscious connects all human beings to a shared reality, a tapestry of archetypes and universal experiences. Recognizing these connections can provide a deeper sense of meaning, purpose, and belonging, empowering individuals to embrace their unique path with greater confidence and awareness. But how can we consciously cultivate our awareness of the cosmos and align ourselves with its underlying order? Are we merely passive observers or active participants in the unfolding drama of the universe? As we move toward the video's conclusion, We will explore practical strategies for aligning ourselves with this universal order, for living a more meaningful and fulfilling life, by recognizing the profound connection between the cosmos within and the cosmos without. However, it's vital to recognize that individuation is not a solitary pursuit, limited to the confines of our own psyche. To achieve complete individuation, we must look beyond ourselves, recognizing our place within the larger cosmic order, a hint of something even greater to come. XXIX, the universe within. Aligning personal intention with cosmic, will we left off asking, how can we consciously cultivate our awareness of the cosmos and align ourselves with its underlying order? A common misconception is that aligning with the cosmos means a passive surrender, a complete dissolution of the ego, becoming merely a leaf on the wind, surrendering all control. However, this is a profound misunderstanding of what it truly means to be in harmony with the universe. To align with cosmic will is not to relinquish your agency, but to actively participate in a larger dance, to consciously co-create with the forces that shape reality. It is, in fact, a form of empowerment, not subservience. Consider the concept of karma, often misunderstood as a preordained, unchangeable fate. In this passive interpretation, one is merely subject to the consequences of past actions, with no ability to alter the course of one's life. A more accurate understanding of karma, however, recognizes the ongoing interplay between past, present, and future, emphasizing our capacity to shape our destiny through conscious choices. Each action, each intention, creates ripples that extend far beyond the immediate moment. Aligning with cosmic will, therefore, involves taking responsibility for these ripples, consciously choosing actions that contribute to the greater good. This brings us to the concept of intention, which is often conflated with ego-driven desire. Desire, in this context, is what the ego wants, often stemming from a place of lack or insecurity. Intention, on the other hand, arises from a deeper source, a conscious alignment with what the self recognizes as its true purpose. It is not about forcing the universe to bend to our will, but about resonating with a deeper, more harmonious order. It is the conscious and unconscious working together, directing us to the manifestation of our desires. The power of intention lies in its ability to act as a signal to the cosmos, setting in motion a chain of events that can lead to manifestation. This is not some magical formula, but a recognition of the interconnectedness of all things. As our intention becomes clear, our actions become more focused, our perceptions more attuned to opportunities, and the universe, it seems, conspires to support our efforts. This phenomenon is often observed in the power of visualization, affirmation, and focused action. These are not mere exercises in positive thinking, but practical tools for shaping reality through cause and effect. As our inner world aligns with our outer actions, we create a powerful resonance that draws our intentions into being. Connect this back to the earlier discussion of the self, emphasizing that the self is not just an individual entity, but a participant in a larger cosmic dance. Jung writes, "The self is not only the center, but also the whole circumference which embraces both conscious and unconscious. It is the center of this totality, just as the ego is the center of consciousness." This implies that the self is not limited to our individual identity, but extends outward to encompass the universe itself. Every action, every choice, changes the song, creating a new vibration that resonates throughout the cosmos. XXX. Manifestation and synchronicity, tools for navigation. Building upon the concept of intention, we turn to synchronicity, which is often dismissed as mere random chance. However, Jung viewed synchronicity as a feedback mechanism from the cosmos, a subtle but powerful way of confirming that we are on the right path. It is a signpost, not the destination itself, but an indication that our intentions are aligned with a deeper cosmic order. Synchronicity becomes a tool for navigation, guiding us along a path of individuation. Consider the example of an individual who is contemplating a career change. They feel drawn to a new field, but are plagued by doubts and fears. Then, they begin to notice a series of seemingly coincidental events. They overhear a conversation about the new field, they stumble upon an inspiring article, they receive an unexpected invitation to a related event. These synchronicities, when interpreted thoughtfully, can serve as confirmation that they are on the right track, encouraging them to overcome their fears and pursue their true calling. However, another individual might interpret these events as a clear sign that they are destined for greatness and begin acting accordingly, ignoring practical considerations and alienating those around them. Both are very different reactions to the same phenomena. When our intention is aligned with cosmic will, synchronicities become more frequent and meaningful, providing guidance and support. This creates a virtuous cycle. Clear intention leads to increased synchronicity, which in turn strengthens our resolve and clarifies our path. The cultivation of an awareness of synchronicities begins with paying attention to our dreams, our intuition, and the unexpected events that occur in our lives. It requires asking ourselves what these events might mean, what messages they might be conveying. Are they pointing us in a new direction? Are they confirming a choice we have already made? By actively engaging with these synchronicities, we can learn to navigate our lives with greater clarity and purpose. However, it is crucial to acknowledge the potential for misinterpreting synchronicities. Not every coincidence is a sign from the universe, and it is important to maintain discernment and self-awareness. The ego, with its insatiable desire for validation, can easily distort our perception of synchronicities, leading us to believe that we are special or chosen, inflating our sense of self-importance. As Jung writes, the psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. Therefore, projecting our desires onto the world and believing that every minor coincidence is a sign of divine favor can lead to delusion and a loss of touch with reality. Relate this back to the earlier discussion of the shadow. Our shadow can distort our perception of synchronicities, leading to misinterpretations and misguided actions. For example, an individual who is secretly envious of others might interpret a colleague's success as a sign that they are being unfairly overlooked, fueling their resentment and leading them to sabotage their own efforts. Constant integration of the shadow, therefore, is not just a matter of personal growth, but a crucial safeguard against misinterpreting the signals we receive from the cosmos. XXXI, ethics and responsibility. The grounded mystic, we have seen how aligning with the cosmos can lead to personal growth and fulfillment. But this begs the question, what are the ethical considerations involved? What responsibility do we have to use our power and influence for the good of all, not just for personal gain? This leads to a new level of stakes and elevates the importance of ethical navigation. The notion that aligning with the cosmos justifies any action is a dangerous fallacy. It is tempting to believe that if we are acting in accordance with a higher purpose, then any means are justified. However, this line of reasoning can lead to disastrous consequences, as history has repeatedly shown. Ethical principles and moral decision-making are not optional extras on the path to individuation, but essential components of a grounded and responsible spirituality. Consider, for example, the rise of various extremist groups throughout history who have used spiritual beliefs to justify violence, oppression, and other harmful actions. These groups often claim to be acting in accordance with divine will, but their actions are clearly motivated by ego-driven desires for power and control. A true alignment with the cosmos, on the other hand, is characterized by humility, compassion, and a commitment to serving the greater good. Humility and self-awareness are essential in navigating the complexities of aligning with the cosmos. It is crucial to maintain a balanced perspective, avoiding ego inflation and recognizing that we are all fallible human beings, prone to making mistakes. This is not absolution from consequence or an excuse for self-serving behavior. As Jung writes, the ethical problem of our time is, that we are still driven by archaic impulses and motives. This implies that the path to individuation requires a constant vigilance, a willingness to confront our own shadow, and to strive for ethical behavior in all aspects of our lives. Once again, we see the pattern of heroic choice emerge. Will the hero use their connection to the cosmos for selfish gain or for the greater good? Will they succumb to the temptation of power, or will they remain grounded in humility and compassion? Each choice leads down a distinct path, shaping not only their own destiny, but the destiny of those around them. XXXII. The journey outward, atonement with the all to summarize, aligning with the cosmos, involves intention, synchronicity, ethical responsibility, and a commitment to serving the greater good. This is not a passive process, but an active engagement with the universe, a conscious co-creation with the forces that shape reality. It requires a constant vigilance, a willingness to confront our own shadow, and a commitment to ethical behavior. Understanding our connection to the cosmos can provide a deeper sense of meaning, purpose, and belonging, empowering us to live more fulfilling lives. This brings us to the ultimate question: what is the next step on our journey of individuation? Where do we go from here? What are we building toward? As we move towards the video's conclusion, we will offer a final synthesis of the core concepts, a call to action for viewers to continue their journey of self-discovery. However, it's vital to recognize that the journey of individuation never truly ends, that there is always more to learn, more to integrate, and more to contribute to the world. We've only scratched the surface, and what we'll discover next is even more shocking. XXXII. The illusion of control. Surrendering to the great mystery, we often cling to the illusion that we are in control of our lives, that we can dictate the course of events and bend the universe to our will. Is this control, however, truly real, or is it merely a comforting story we tell ourselves to avoid the anxiety of the unknown? The ego, with its relentless desire for certainty, resists the natural flow of change and transformation, leading to a state of perpetual unease. This resistance manifests as suffering, a direct consequence of clinging to what was rather than embracing what is. Like a clenched fist desperately trying to hold water, the tighter we grip, the more we lose. Consider, then, the concept of surrender. Often misconstrued as weakness or resignation, surrender is, in fact, an active and conscious choice to relinquish the illusion of control and to trust in the unfolding of the cosmos. It is not passivity, nor is it an abdication of responsibility. It is, instead, a radical acceptance of the inherent uncertainty of life, a recognition that we are not the sole architects of our destiny. It is the difficult realization that the ego is not the pilot of the ship, and that the ship is not only sailing towards an unknown destination, but perhaps is the ship itself piloting the ego. Connect this back to the earlier discussion of intention. True intention does not arise from the ego's frantic desires, but from a deeper connection to the self, a resonance with the cosmic will. It's the difficult understanding that what is far more important than what you want. The ego seeks to impose its will upon the world, striving to mold reality to fit its preconceived notions. The self, on the other hand, recognizes its place within the larger tapestry of existence, aligning its actions with the natural flow of events. When aligned, it ceases feeling like surrender and instead feels more like returning. XXXIV. Embracing uncertainty. Finding freedom in the unknown, this leads us to the paradox of surrender. By letting go of control, we gain access to a deeper form of power and freedom. Like the martial art of Aikido, where one uses an opponent's force against them by yielding and redirecting their energy, surrendering to the universe allows us to tap into a source of strength that transcends our individual limitations. The more we yield, the stronger we become, the more we relax, the more freely we flow. Elaborate on the practice of mindfulness as a powerful tool for cultivating acceptance and non-attachment. Mindfulness, in its essence, is the practice of being present in the moment without judgment, observing our thoughts and feelings without getting carried away by them. This state of being, rather than doing, allows us to detach from the ego's incessant chatter and to connect with a deeper sense of peace and clarity. It is the realization that you are not your thoughts, but you are the awareness of your thoughts. From this vantage point, our anxiety softens. Connect mindfulness to the earlier discussion of synchronicity. By being present in the moment, we become more attuned to the subtle signals that the universe sends our way, noticing and interpreting meaningful coincidences that might otherwise pass us by unnoticed. In this way, mindfulness allows us to navigate our lives with greater intuition and purpose, recognizing that even the most unexpected events can hold valuable lessons and opportunities for growth. The key, however, is to face the fear of the unknown. We cannot deny that the fear of the unknown is a natural human emotion rooted in our primal instinct for survival. But it is also the very thing that holds us back from realizing our full potential. For it is in the unknown that we discover new possibilities, challenge our limitations, and expand our horizons. As counterintuitive as it may seem, the most profound leaps of faith are not leaps toward the light, but leaps into the dark. As a man standing on a precipice cannot know what is below until he casts himself over the edge. XXXV. The gift of mortality. Finding meaning in impermanence, elevating the conversation, let us now explore the profound relationship between mortality and meaning. Life, in its essence, is fleeting, a transient dance between birth and death. It is this very impermanence that imbues life with its beauty and its urgency. Contemplate what life would be like if it never ended, if we were granted immortality, if the clock never ticked, if time was limitless. Will we still value each moment, cherish each connection, strive to make a difference in the world? Or would we become complacent, indifferent, and ultimately empty? Reframe death not as a tragic ending, but as an integral part of the cycle of life and transformation. It is not to be feared, but respected, not to be avoided, but embraced as the ultimate teacher. Connect this to the earlier discussion of ego death, emphasizing that letting go of attachments, of identities, of fixed ideas, is essential for personal growth and spiritual awakening. We must be willing to release the old in order to make space for the new, to shed our skin like a snake and emerge into a new state of being. Jung writes, "Without acceptance, you can't go forward." Highlight the importance of living each day with intention and gratitude, knowing that life is precious and fleeting. Make the most of mortality, using it as a catalyst for growth, connection, and contribution. Seek out experiences that challenge you, connect with people who inspire you, and create something that will outlive you. Because life is a gift, even when it hurts, even when it breaks our hearts, even when it seems unbearable. It is in these moments of pain that we discover our resilience, our capacity for love, and the true depths of our souls. XXXVI. The hero's legacy. Contributing to the cosmic tapestry, here is a hard cut. The journey is not done with the individual. One major misunderstanding is that the heroic journey is solely about personal transformation, a self-centered quest for individual enlightenment. But this is a deeply flawed perspective. The heroic journey, at its core, also involves contributing to the greater good, leaving the world a better place than we found it. Is a hero still a hero if they are the only one that benefits from their quest? If they hoard their treasures, isolate themselves from society, and neglect the needs of others? Explore how each individual's unique gifts, talents, and experiences can be used to create a more just, compassionate, and sustainable world. What is each person's unique position in the cosmic tapestry, the specific thread that only they can weave? Connect this to the earlier discussion of the collective unconscious, emphasizing that we are all interconnected, that our actions have ripple effects throughout the cosmos. Every act of kindness, every act of courage, every act of creativity contributes to the overall harmony and balance of the universe. Therefore, it is paramount to leave a positive legacy, not just for oneself but for future generations. What will you be remembered for? What impact will you have on the world? Will you be a force for good, a source of inspiration, a beacon of hope? Or will you fade into oblivion, leaving behind nothing but dust and regret? This is not just a question for the ages. It is a question for each and every one of us, a call to action to step into our heroic potential and to weave our unique thread into the cosmic tapestry. The weaving of your individual experience into the overall cosmic tapestry is not just a part of your growth, but the growth of all. XXXVII. Synthesis. The heroes return in summary, surrendering to the great mystery, embracing uncertainty, finding meaning in mortality, and contributing to the cosmic tapestry are all essential aspects of aligning with the universe. When we relinquish the illusion of control, we open ourselves to a deeper form of power and freedom. When we embrace the unknown, we unlock our creative potential. When we confront our mortality, we discover the true value of life. And when we contribute to the greater good, we fulfill our heroic purpose. Understanding our connection to the cosmos can provide a deeper sense of meaning, purpose, and belonging, empowering us to live more fulfilling lives. So, what is our final action as heroes? What thread will we contribute? XXXVI. The call to embark the journey of individuation and heroic transformation is not a destination, but a continuous cycle, a spiral that leads us ever deeper into the mysteries of the self and the cosmos. The path of the hero is one of constant change, evolution, and self-discovery. It is a process of becoming, a lifelong quest to realize our full potential and to live in alignment with our true selves. Now it's time to embark. Final thoughts. What is one willing to surrender, to accept, and to integrate to better add to the overall tapestry? XXXIX. The descent, a necessary detour or eternal damnation. We often speak of the descent in heroic narratives as a symbolic journey into the unconscious, a confrontation with the shadow self, a necessary ordeal before the hero can ascend to new heights. But have we considered the possibility that the descent is not just going in, but a falling down, a literal fall from grace, from a state of innocence or equilibrium into the depths of suffering and despair? What happens when the hero doesn't just explore the underworld, but becomes trapped within it? Contrast this idea with the conventional interpretation. The descent can be a catalyst for profound growth, as seen in the myth of Inanna, who descends into the underworld to confront her shadow sister Ereshkigal, ultimately returning with greater wisdom and power. However, it can also be a catastrophic failure, a point of no return, as exemplified by Icarus, whose hubris leads to his fall from the sky and his untimely death. The key lies not in the descent itself, but in how the hero responds to the adversity encountered within its dark depths. Will they succumb to the temptations and torments of the underworld, or will they find the strength to rise above them and emerge transformed? This leads us to a more nuanced understanding. The fall is the point of no return, the moment when the hero is irrevocably changed by their experience. It is no longer about simply confronting one's inner demons, but about facing the consequences of one's choices and actions. How will this newfound awareness influence the hero's subsequent journey and their ability to integrate the shadow self? What price must they pay for their descent, and how will it shape their understanding of themselves and the world around them? If the heroic journey is not about avoiding darkness, but about embracing it, then what does that mean for those who never return from the descent, those who are forever lost in the labyrinth of their own suffering? Excel. The geography of the underworld. Mapping the landscape of suffering to truly understand the significance of the descent, we must extend the metaphor of the underworld beyond the personal unconscious, framing it as a shared realm of human suffering, a landscape populated by the lost, the tormented, and the forgotten. It is not just about mapping our individual fears and anxieties, but about confronting the collective pain of humanity. What happens when the individual refuses to integrate with the whole, when they turn a blind eye to the suffering of others? Specific examples of this shared suffering can be found throughout history, from the concentration camps of World War II to the countless instances of poverty, oppression, and injustice that continue to plague our world. These are not merely abstract concepts, but tangible realities, landscapes of despair where the human spirit is tested to its limits. Within these landscapes, we see the consequences of unchecked power, the erosion of empathy, and the disintegration of moral values. Like the rings of hell in Dante's Inferno, the landscape of shared suffering descends from minor vices to unconscionable evils. Analyzing specific features and terrain of the underworld reveals how these environments test the hero's resolve. The river Styx, for example, represents the boundary between life and death, forcing the hero to confront their own mortality and the fragility of existence. The labyrinth of the Minotaur, with its twisting corridors and dead ends, symbolizes the confusion and disorientation that can arise when we lose our way in the darkness. Each obstacle, each challenge, is designed to strip away the hero's illusions and force them to confront the raw, unfiltered truth of their own being. There must be a release of what no longer serves. What is it about pain that seems to demand its own release? Excelli. Navigating the labyrinth, tools for mapping the underworld having mapped the general symbols and tropes, we must now ask, what are the specific skills that can be used to successfully navigate the underworld, to traverse the landscape of suffering and emerge transformed? Is it the power of the mind, the empathy of the heart, or something else entirely? It's easy to say, think your way out, or feel your way out, but it's another to practice it, day in and day out. Introduce various tools and techniques for navigating the underworld, drawing from diverse traditions such as mindfulness, meditation, and shamanic practices. Mindfulness allows us to be present in the moment, observing our thoughts and feelings without judgment, while meditation helps us to quiet the mind and connect with a deeper sense of inner peace. Shamanic practices, on the other hand, offer a way to journey into altered states of consciousness, where we can access hidden realms of knowledge and healing. Each practice offers unique tools. Let us explore a more practical guide to this navigation. What if we view these practices as a compass, clear intention, a map, integrated shadow, and a weapon, unconditional self-acceptance? The compass provides direction, helping us to stay on course despite the distractions and temptations that we encounter along the way. The map allows us to understand the terrain, to anticipate potential dangers, and to identify paths that lead to safety and healing. The weapon, finally, enables us to defend ourselves against the forces of darkness, to resist the urge to succumb to despair, and to maintain our commitment to growth and transformation. No one can go it alone. Connect this back to the earlier discussion of synchronicity. The ability to recognize and interpret meaningful coincidences can provide guidance and support on the journey through the underworld. A seemingly random encounter, a chance conversation, or an unexpected insight can offer a clue that helps us to navigate the labyrinth and find our way back to the light. What seems random is actually vital. Even the darkest of alleys will lead to an unlocked door. But what happens when we get face to face with the beast, Excelii, the Minotaur within? Confronting the beast of the shadow, the Minotaur, that monstrous hybrid of man and bull, is the beast that dwells in the heart of the labyrinth, the ultimate symbol of the shadow self. The final confrontation with this beast is now at hand, the moment when the hero must face their deepest fears and darkest desires. This, of course, assumes the goal is to leave the labyrinth. Here, we must challenge and reframe our previous understanding of the shadow self. Is it simply something to be integrated, a collection of repressed qualities that can be brought into the light of consciousness? Or is there a final confrontation required, a moment of reckoning when the hero must actively choose to overcome the darkness and embrace their true potential? It is one thing to be aware of our flaws, but another to actively make choices counter to them. This leads us to a critical choice: be swallowed into the Minotaur, consumed by the raw, untamed energy of the shadow, or tame it, learn to harness its power, and set it free. One path leads to destruction, to a life lived in the thrall of unconscious impulses and destructive behaviors. The other leads to liberation, to a state of wholeness and self-mastery, where the hero is able to embrace their full potential, both light and dark. Is it possible that the Minotaur doesn't want to be a beast? Explore active imagination as a powerful way to set free the Minotaur, to engage in a dialogue with the shadow self and understand its needs, its fears, and its desires. What are some practical examples of this? Perhaps it involves writing a letter to the Minotaur, expressing your feelings and asking it to share its story. Or maybe it entails creating a work of art that embodies the Minotaur, allowing you to explore its symbolism and meaning. However you approach it, the goal is to create a safe space where the shadow self can express itself without judgment, where its hidden potential can be revealed. By releasing the Minotaur, you gain access to its power. What seems to be the biggest, most terrifying aspect of yourself may, in fact, be your biggest strength. But how does one atone for the years of running? Excelia. The hero's atonement. Healing the wounds of the past, it is time to elevate the role of atonement, reframing it not as punishment or regret, but as an opportunity for forgiveness, healing, and reconciliation. Atonement is not about dwelling on past mistakes or wallowing in guilt, but about taking responsibility for one's actions and making amends for the harm that has been caused. Can mistakes truly be erased? Those who have caused great harm often do so because of wounds that fester within, traumas that have never been addressed or resolved. These wounds can manifest as anger, resentment, and a desire for revenge, leading individuals to lash out at others and perpetuate cycles of violence and suffering. Unless these wounds are healed, the cycle will continue, and the past will continue to haunt the present. What is one to do with a past that is unforgivable? Discuss the importance of extending compassion not only to oneself, but also to others, even those who have caused harm. This is not to condone their actions or excuse their behavior, but to recognize their shared humanity and to understand the root causes of their suffering. Show that compassion is the solution, the key to breaking free from the cycles of violence and creating a more just and equitable world. Without it, the patterns will continue to repeat. What we discover is the connection between personal healing and social justice. Creating a more just and compassionate world requires addressing the wounds of the past, both individually and collectively. The legacy of trauma, oppression, and injustice continues to shape our present reality, influencing our relationships, our institutions, and our cultural norms. Only by acknowledging this legacy and working to heal its wounds can we create a future where all people can thrive. But is it truly possible to heal the world? Excelia. The hero's return. Weaving the tapestry of transformation. Transformation is never complete, a static state to be achieved and then maintained. It is a continuous cycle, a spiral that leads us ever deeper into the mysteries of the self and the cosmos. The heroic journey is not a one-time event, but a lifelong process of growth, evolution, and self-discovery. What can we truly achieve when we return from our heroic act? Discuss the gift the hero brings back to the world. It is not simply about personal enlightenment or individual achievement, but about sharing the wisdom, compassion, and courage that they have gained along the way. The hero's return is an opportunity to inspire others, to empower them to embark on their own journeys of transformation and to contribute to the greater good. But what is truly left to share after one has faced their own shadow? It is time to expand upon the question, why is transformation essential to the cosmic journey? The weaving of your individual experience into the overall cosmic tapestry is not just a part of your growth, but the growth of all. And how does one truly understand the full weight and potential? XLV. Synthesis. Aligning with the cosmos, let us summarize the key takeaways. What can we integrate from our experience? What have we atoned for? What must we release to progress forward? The journey of individuation and heroic transformation is not a destination, but a continuous cycle. Now that we know who we are, what will we do with this knowledge? What is the meaning of life? XLVI. The call to embark the journey of individuation and heroic transformation is not a destination, but a continuous cycle, a spiral that leads us ever deeper into the mysteries of the self and the cosmos. Final thoughts. What are we willing to surrender, to accept, and to integrate to better add to the overall tapestry? Now it's time to embark. XLVII. The echo chamber of the shadow. Projection as a distorting mirror. What happens when the very lens through which we perceive the world is clouded by the darkness of our own unacknowledged shadow? It is dangerous enough to not see your own shadow, but it's an entirely different crisis when you start to see only that in everyone else. Viewing the shadow solely in personal terms, as a collection of individual flaws and repressed desires, is insufficient. The true danger arises when this isolated perspective distorts our relationship with the external world, warping every interaction and fostering a climate of mistrust and misunderstanding. Psychological projection, a concept first articulated by Sigmund Freud, is the unconscious mechanism by which we attribute our own unacceptable thoughts, feelings, and motivations to others. It is more than simply identifying dangerous traits. It is an active disavowal of our own inner landscape, a desperate attempt to externalize the very aspects of ourselves that we find most disturbing. This misalignment of the inner and outer world creates a distorted reality, where the flaws we condemn in others are, in fact, reflections of our own unacknowledged shadow. How, then, can we claim ethical high ground when we are merely projecting our own darkness onto others? By projecting, do we excuse ourselves from the responsibility of our own shadow's influence? XLVII. Breaking the mirror. Techniques for reclaiming projections. The first step in breaking the mirror of projection lies in active observation of our emotional reactions to others. Before you can change the world, you must first change yourself. When someone triggers a strong emotional response, be it anger, disgust, admiration, or envy, pause and examine what qualities in that person are provoking that reaction. Are you reacting to what is or what you are? Consider this specific example. You find yourself consistently irritated by a colleague's boastfulness. Instead of dismissing this as an objective observation of their character, treat it as a clue. What aspects of your own shadow are being illuminated by this interaction? Could it be that you secretly desire recognition and praise, but fear appearing arrogant? Or perhaps you harbor a deep-seated insecurity about your own accomplishments and feel threatened by others' success. The emotion is the clue. The key is to challenge the idea that these are objective observations. Instead, treat them as clues that illuminate aspects of your own shadow. Are you seeing what is or what you are? This leads to the technique of owning projections, consciously acknowledging that the qualities you dislike or admire in others are also present within yourself, though perhaps in a latent or unacknowledged form. This process of owning our projections requires courage and humility, for it demands that we confront the very aspects of ourselves that we have long sought to deny. XLIX. The social shadow. Unveiling the collective projections, it is time to broaden our scope and consider how the echo chamber of the shadow ripples outward, influencing not just individual interactions, but also collective thought processes. The shadow doesn't end with an individual, but grows within communities. Extending the analysis from individual projections to collective projections reveals a far more insidious dynamic at play. This is no longer about one bad apple, but a systemic rot, a bad orchard, where the shadow permeates the entire structure. Consider the role of scapegoating in contemporary politics, social media, and cultural conflicts. A current, real-world example can be found in the pervasive demonization of entire groups of people based on their political affiliation, religious beliefs, or cultural background. This is not simply a matter of disagreement or differing opinions. It is an active projection of the shadow onto the other, a disavowal of shared humanity. Collective projections reinforce social divisions, creating us versus them mentalities that hinder understanding and compassion. By projecting our fears, anxieties, and insecurities onto others, we create a distorted reality where empathy is eroded, and violence becomes not only possible but justified. The atrocities committed throughout history, from the witch trials of the Middle Ages to the genocides of the 20th century, are stark reminders of the destructive power of collective projections. Integrating groupthink. Recognizing the role, how can society begin to release itself from the grip of collective projections? The answer lies in a process of collective integration, a willingness to acknowledge and confront the shadow that permeates our shared consciousness. This requires an honest assessment of our history, a recognition of the injustices and oppressions that have been perpetrated in the name of ideology, religion, or national identity. But what is the individual's responsibility in this grand endeavor? We must extend and relate concepts of atonement and releasing from previous points. Just as individual atonement involves taking responsibility for one's actions and making amends for the harm caused, collective atonement requires acknowledging the collective guilt and working towards reconciliation and healing. This is not about assigning blame or demanding retribution, but about creating a future where such atrocities are never repeated. The individual responsibility for releasing society from the shadow lies in cultivating critical thinking, challenging dominant narratives, and fostering empathy and understanding across social divides. This requires great strength and will, for it means standing against the tide of public opinion, questioning deeply held beliefs, and risking social ostracism. The hero in this phase becomes a beacon of truth, a voice of reason, and a catalyst for change. But is society always ready to be saved? Ethical responsibility. The individual's actions, the ultimate question then becomes, does this mean the hero must integrate society's shadow or simply their own? And what are the ethical implications of attempting to force societal integration? Is it ethical to force others to integrate as well, to impose one's own understanding of the shadow onto those who may not be ready or willing to confront it? If they do not consent to the integration, is the hero's action then tyrannical, an act of oppression disguised as enlightenment? Nuanced ethical examples abound throughout history. Consider the well-intentioned but ultimately destructive efforts of colonial powers to civilize indigenous populations, imposing their own cultural values and beliefs under the guise of progress. Or, closer to home, consider the divisive rhetoric employed by political leaders who seek to unite their base by demonizing their opponents, exacerbating social divisions in the name of national unity. History is replete with examples of heroes integrating their society for good and ill. From the benevolent dictators who ushered in periods of unprecedented prosperity to the revolutionary leaders who sparked violent uprisings in the name of freedom, the line between savior and tyrant is often blurred. The key lies in recognizing the inherent limitations of our own perspective and respecting the autonomy and agency of others. For what does it mean to truly integrate when you're dragging others along? The final steps for transformation. As we approach the culmination of this journey, let us summarize the key takeaways. The shadow cannot be banished from the self. The self is inextricably linked to society, and the universe is contained within. The heroic journey is not about escaping the darkness, but about navigating it with wisdom, compassion, and courage. We must also summarize the ethical constraints on the hero and the potential downfalls to not being ethical. The path to transformation is fraught with peril, and the choices we make along the way will determine not only our own fate, but the fate of those around us. For now that the journey is almost done, what truly is the final destination? It is time to step into the unknown, to embrace the paradox of existence, and to accept the responsibility that comes with wielding the power of transformation. Now it's time to find out whether the transformation was worth the cost. The prison of guilt. Is remorse enough? We often assume that guilt and remorse are inherently positive emotions, signals that we've done wrong and are motivated to change. But what if this assumption is wrong? What if guilt, instead of catalyzing transformation, becomes a paralyzing force, trapping us in the endless loop of past mistakes? While we've examined the ethical tightrope of integrating our own shadow, we have yet to consider if that shadow has been integrated, or if it's something that requires release from the self. Guilt, it seems, can be a double-edged sword. On one edge, it can indeed be a catalyst for change, prompting us to acknowledge our errors and strive to make amends. However, on the other, it can become a debilitating weight, anchoring us to the past and preventing us from moving forward. Is it ever truly ethical to forgive oneself? And if so, how can this seemingly impossible feat be achieved? Is it not the ego's ultimate defense, to create such turmoil that there is no space for action? Guilt and remorse alone are not enough. So what are the specific actions needed to atone for past wrongs and move forward? Is there a specific action, or is atonement something that happens internally and cannot be measured externally? We can make amends, offer apologies, and dedicate ourselves to preventing future harm. But what if, despite all our efforts, the weight of our past actions continues to haunt us? If atoning is not enough, what then? If the journey of individuation is about becoming whole, what does that mean for those who cannot forgive themselves? Does it mean they are eternally doomed to remain fragmented, forever trapped in the prison of their own guilt? Liv. The altar of sacrifice. The illusion of self-punishment. Let us broaden the metaphor of sacrifice beyond the literal, framing it as any attempt to pay for past sins through self-punishment. The heroic journey, as we have explored, often involves a descent into the underworld, a confrontation with one's shadow self. But what happens when the hero becomes fixated on the underworld, endlessly punishing themselves for past transgressions, transforming from hero to martyr? We tend to revere those who sacrifice everything for a cause, viewing them as paragons of selflessness and devotion. But what if these sacrifices are not as selfless as they appear? What if they are simply another manifestation of the ego's desire for control and recognition, a way of proving one's worthiness through suffering? Is it truly an offering of one's will, or is it a desperate attempt to control an uncontrollable past? What makes one sacrifice good, and another simply self-destructive? How does self-flagellation actually affect the hero's journey to integrate into the whole? Does it push them further away, further into the depths of the underworld, or does it ultimately lead to redemption? Analyze the sacrifices of the heroes of past. Are they truly selfless, or are they simply another manifestation of the ego's desire for control and recognition? Does the hero actually make that sacrifice for others, or to be seen as a hero? Is there a difference, and if so, what is the ethical distinction? Is there a point when sacrifice becomes a form of self-harm, a way of avoiding the real work of integration and transformation? It is at this point that the hero must decide whether to be swallowed by guilt or set it free. Lv. The path of redemption. Reclaiming agency and purpose, it is time to refine the map. If the journey of individuation is a process of becoming whole, then redemption must be more than simply paying your dues. Is redemption something that can be given by others, or is it ultimately self-granted? If atonement is not enough, and sacrifice can be an illusion, what are the actual steps the hero must take to become something more? There are practical tools and techniques for reclaiming agency and purpose in the aftermath of guilt and remorse, drawn from traditions of forgiveness, reconciliation, and restorative justice. Seeking to repair the damage caused by past actions, making amends to those who have been harmed, and dedicating oneself to preventing similar harm in the future, this is but a start. But it is not enough to simply do good to outweigh the bad. The key lies in aligning oneself with a higher purpose, a genuine intention to contribute to the greater good. Cultivating self-compassion, resilience, and a commitment to ethical action in the face of ongoing challenges and setbacks requires great courage and perseverance. As discussed previously, a genuine intention to contribute to the greater good can serve as a powerful force for transformation and redemption, both for oneself and for others. What seems random, chaotic, and meaningless often turns out to be vital, essential, and divinely orchestrated. The alignment with the cosmos. LVI. The phoenix rising. Atonement as rebirth, the descent into the underworld motif. A recurring theme in mythology and literature, is often interpreted as a symbolic death, a necessary step in the process of transformation. But atonement can also represent its own rebirth. How do they correlate, and how does one affect the other? The hero stands at a crossroads, faced with a crucial choice: be swallowed into the abyss of guilt, forever haunted by the shadows of the past, or take flight from the ashes, embracing the opportunity for renewal and transformation. Active imagination can be a powerful tool for setting free the guilt, for confronting the inner demons and integrating the shadow. What are some practical examples of this? Perhaps the hero engages in a dialogue with their past self, offering forgiveness and understanding. Or perhaps they create a symbolic representation of their guilt, only to destroy it in a cathartic act of release. Through active imagination, the hero confronts the darkest aspects of their being, coming to terms with their flaws and limitations. In accepting their own imperfections, they can shed the weight of guilt and embrace the possibility of transformation. The phoenix is not simply a symbol of death and rebirth. It is a testament to the power of atonement to unlock the potential for renewal and growth. LVII. The hero's legacy. Shaping the future with compassion, this journey is not simply about absolution of the self, but rather about adding value to society after mistakes have been made. How can the hero, forged in the fires of transformation, use their newfound wisdom and compassion to shape a better future? It is in this way that they become valuable to the society, and therefore to the cosmos. The gift that the hero brings back to the world is not simply the lesson of integration, but the actions they are now able to take. It is the commitment to ethical action, the dedication to serving others, and the unwavering belief in the power of transformation. The transformation of self inevitably influences the cosmic journey, for each individual is a microcosm of the universe, and their actions ripple outward, affecting the whole. By aligning their will with the greater good, the hero becomes a catalyst for change, inspiring others to embark on their own journeys of transformation. Draw all threads of the video to now. The weaving of your individual experience into the overall cosmic tapestry is not just a part of your growth, but the growth of all. As the hero rises from the ashes, they carry with them the hopes and dreams of humanity, becoming a beacon of light in a world shrouded in darkness. It is up to the hero to take these lessons and to act accordingly. LVII. Synthesis. Finding the way out of the underworld, just knowing the steps is not enough. Forging the will to act on them is paramount. What have we learned on this journey? What can we integrate from our shadow selves? What have we atoned for, and what must we release to make space for the new? We are all faced with the final task. Now it's time to choose our next step on the heroic path, and whether to embrace our full potential or fade into the darkness. We have seen the patterns, examples, consequences, and risks. It is up to the hero to choose their next steps on the path to integration and individuation. LIX. The price of heroism, sacrifice, loss, and the wounds of transformation is the hero's journey always a triumphant tale of victory and self-discovery? Or is there a darker side to the sacrifices made along the way? We are often presented with a romanticized vision of the hero, a figure who overcomes all obstacles and emerges victorious. But this narrative often obscures the profound costs associated with such a journey. For every triumphant return, there are countless unsung sacrifices, devastating losses, and enduring wounds that the hero carries, a constant reminder of what was and what has been lost. These wounds, both physical and psychological, serve as a permanent record of the hero's struggles, a testament to the battles fought and the prices paid. They are not merely scars to be healed and forgotten, but rather integral components of the hero's identity, shaping their understanding of the world and their place within it. Can the hero truly be whole if they carry so much weight from the past, or does the greater good ultimately exact a price too high to bear. We admire the person willing to give everything for a cause, but what happens when that devotion turns into neglect of their personal life, relationships, and health? Is the heroic ideal worth the cost if it leaves the individual broken and isolated? Consider the example of a dedicated social worker who tirelessly advocates for marginalized communities, neglecting their own well-being and family in the process. While their work undoubtedly makes a positive impact on the lives of others, the constant exposure to trauma and suffering can take a significant toll, leading to burnout, emotional exhaustion, and fractured relationships. They become a hero to many, but at the expense of their own personal happiness and fulfillment. The wounds they carry are not visible to the outside world, but they are no less real, a constant reminder of the sacrifices they have made and the price they have paid for their heroic endeavors. Can such a person truly be considered whole, or are they destined to forever bear the burden of their sacrifices? This brings us to a critical question. Does the end always justify the means? The hero often faces difficult choices, forced to weigh the potential consequences of their actions and make decisions that may cause harm to others in the pursuit of a greater good. But what happens when those good intentions go awry, leading to unintended consequences and unforeseen suffering? LX. The burden of responsibility. When good intentions go awry, expanding beyond individual sacrifice, we must consider the ethical complexities of leadership and the potential for even well-intentioned actions to have unintended consequences. A noble goal does not automatically translate into a righteous act, and those in positions of power must grapple with the weighty responsibility of their decisions, knowing that their actions can have far-reaching and often unpredictable effects. How does a leader navigate the treacherous terrain of ethical dilemmas, ensuring that their pursuit of the greater good does not inadvertently inflict harm upon the innocent? Leaders often fall prey to the ends justify the means mentality, justifying morally questionable actions in the name of a greater cause. This ethical trap can lead to a slippery slope, where small compromises pave the way for larger transgressions, ultimately eroding the very values that the leader initially sought to uphold. The potential for corruption is always present, and those in positions of power must remain vigilant against the seductive allure of expediency. Humility and self-awareness are therefore paramount, constantly questioning their own motives and assumptions, seeking counsel from trusted advisors, and remaining open to dissenting opinions. Take, for example, a political leader who makes a difficult decision to launch a military intervention in a foreign country with the intention of protecting their nation from a perceived threat. While the leader may genuinely believe that their actions are necessary to prevent a greater catastrophe, the intervention may ultimately cause harm to innocent civilians, destabilize the region, and create a breeding ground for extremism. The leader's good intentions, however sincere, do not absolve them of the responsibility for the unintended consequences of their actions. As Jung writes, the shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. But what happens when this power is abused, when those in positions of authority succumb to the temptations of corruption and tyranny? What factors contribute to the abuse of power, and what measures can be taken to resist oppression and restore balance and harmony? LXI. The labyrinth of power. Corruption, tyranny, and the abuse of authority. Delving deeper into the map of the human psyche, we inevitably encounter the labyrinth of power, a complex and often treacherous landscape where corruption, tyranny, and the abuse of authority reign supreme. Specific historical examples, such as the reign of Nero, the Salem witch trials, or the rise of totalitarian regimes in the 20th century, serve as stark reminders of the depth to which humanity can sink when power is unchecked and accountability is absent. These events, though separated by time and circumstance, share a common thread: the insidious corruption of power and the devastating consequences for those who fall victim to its abuse. Several psychological factors contribute to the abuse of power, including narcissism, paranoia, and the insatiable desire for control. Those afflicted by these tendencies may view others as mere instruments to be manipulated, lacking empathy and compassion for their fellow human beings. They may surround themselves with sycophants and suppress dissent, creating an echo chamber that reinforces their own distorted worldview. As Lord Acton famously stated, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." The lack of accountability, unchecked authority, and suppression of dissent create fertile ground for corruption and tyranny to flourish. The systemic factors that enable corruption and tyranny to flourish are equally important to consider. When institutions are weak, laws are selectively enforced, and the media is controlled by the state, those in power are free to act with impunity, knowing that their actions will not be subject to scrutiny or challenge. Corruption becomes normalized, and those who dare to speak out against the abuse of power may face persecution, imprisonment, or even death. But what happens when the hero becomes an enemy of the state, when their pursuit of justice and truth leads them to challenge the very foundations of power? How do they resist oppression, and what strategies can they employ to reclaim power and restore balance and harmony? LXII. Resisting tyranny. The heroic act of defiance, the traditional image of the hero, is challenged when that hero becomes an enemy of the state, a rebel against the established order. This alternative form of heroism demands courage, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to justice, often in the face of overwhelming odds. Those who choose to resist tyranny must be prepared to sacrifice their personal safety, their freedom, and even their lives for the sake of their ideals. Nonviolent resistance, civil disobedience, and the protection of human rights become essential tools in the struggle against oppression. Drawing inspiration from figures like Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr., these heroes employ peaceful means to challenge unjust laws and policies, appealing to the conscience of the oppressor and mobilizing public support for their cause. The power of many, united in their commitment to justice, can overcome even the most formidable forces of tyranny. Historical examples of successful resistance movements, such as the Civil Rights Movement in the United States, the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, and the Solidarity movement in Poland, demonstrate the transformative potential of collective action. These movements, though diverse in their specific goals and strategies, shared a common commitment to nonviolent resistance, civil disobedience, and the unwavering belief in the power of the human spirit to overcome oppression. But how can one's journey to resist tyranny and reclaim power alter the very fabric of society? Can individual transformation lead to collective liberation? And what does a world look like where power is not simply viewed in terms of one person's ability to control another? LXII. Reclaiming power. Restoring balance and harmony, elevating our perspective, we can see that the hero's journey, when successfully navigated, has the potential to alter the fabric of society itself. It moves past the individual to change the collective. A single act of courage can inspire countless others to stand up for what is right, creating a ripple effect that transforms the social and political landscape. But in doing so, it cannot create another situation where someone is placed in a position to be harmed. It is, therefore, an act of liberation. Refining our understanding of power, we must explore a world where it is not simply viewed in terms of one person's ability to control another. Power can also be seen as the capacity to empower others, to create opportunities for growth and development, and to foster a sense of community and shared purpose. In this context, the hero becomes a catalyst for collective transformation, inspiring others to embrace their own potential and contribute to the creation of a more just and equitable world. Imagine a society where power is distributed equitably, where all voices are heard, and where decisions are made collaboratively, with the best interests of all in mind. In this world, leadership is not about domination and control, but about service and stewardship, guiding the community towards a shared vision of the future. Corruption and tyranny are replaced by transparency and accountability, and the abuse of power is met with swift and decisive action. This may sound utopian, but the seeds of such a society already exist in communities around the world, where individuals are working together to create a more just and sustainable future. But what comes next, as there is no final step, final conclusion? LXIV. Synthesis, the journey's end, or a new beginning, challenging all notions of conclusion, we must ask, where does the hero's journey truly begin again? The integration of the shadow, the atonement for past wrongs, the resistance against tyranny, and the reclamation of power are not simply endpoints to be reached, but rather ongoing processes that demand constant vigilance and adaptation. Is it all worth it? If everything is integrated, is it all worth the sacrifice? The hero now knows that the journey is never truly over, that there will always be new challenges to face, new obstacles to overcome, and new opportunities to learn and grow. They know that the pursuit of justice and truth is a lifelong commitment, demanding unwavering courage, resilience, and compassion. They will act with humility and empathy, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of all human beings, even those who may seem to be their enemies. Most importantly, the hero will teach others what they have learned, sharing their wisdom and experience with those who are just beginning their own journeys of transformation. They will challenge long-held assumptions, break down barriers of prejudice and ignorance, and inspire others to embrace their own potential for greatness. This knowledge is invaluable, but what long-held assumptions still need to be addressed? And how can the hero truly make a difference in a world that is often resistant to change? What could that ultimate teaching be? LXV. The end of the road. What was the meaning of it all? What if the hero, after facing their shadow, overcoming impossible odds, and integrating all aspects of their being, still finds that the grand cosmic purpose they sought remains elusive? What if the promised meaning, the ultimate reward for their sacrifices, never materializes? The heroic narrative often suggests a guaranteed triumph, a clear path to enlightenment and fulfillment. However, the reality is that the quest for meaning is fraught with uncertainty, and the risk of failure is ever present. The hero's journey, in its purest form, does not offer a money-back guarantee. Consider the ethical quandary of a hero who topples a tyrannical regime, liberating a kingdom from oppression, only to witness the rise of an even more insidious power in its place. What if, despite their best intentions and valiant efforts, their actions inadvertently plunge the world into further chaos and suffering? The hero is left to reconcile with the fact that their actions did not make the world a better place. Was their fight in vain? How will the hero know if they have made the right call? The quest for meaning is often a deeply individual experience, shaped by unique circumstances and personal aspirations. The heroic journey is not a linear process with a predetermined outcome. It is a winding path of self-discovery, filled with unexpected detours and unforeseen challenges. The destination may shift, the goalposts may move, and the meaning may evolve along the way. But what happens when the hero reaches a point where the original meaning they sought seems unattainable or even irrelevant? Is all lost? LXVI. The Hall of Mirrors. Reflecting meaning in a chaotic world. If the hero fails to achieve their original cosmic ideal, is there still a way to find meaning in a world that often feels chaotic and devoid of inherent purpose? Perhaps the answer lies not in some grand, overarching narrative, but in the reflections of others, in the connections forged and the lives touched along the way. Meaning may not be a singular, monolithic entity, but rather a mosaic of experiences, relationships, and acts of service. In other words, meaning is often found not in individual grandiosity, but in a network of meaningful connections. Instead of seeking a single, all-encompassing purpose, the hero can find meaning in connecting with others, becoming a guiding influence, and acting as a force for good in their immediate circle. This may involve mentoring the next generation, advocating for social justice, or simply offering a listening ear to those in need. Being a positive influence can be a fulfilling end, despite it being unplanned. Von Franz writes, "The anima as the guide of souls points the way to that condition of relatedness, that filigree, which alone can give the world and life meaning." However, it is important to acknowledge that even the best-laid plans can go awry. Projects often encounter unforeseen obstacles, intentions can be misinterpreted, and outcomes can deviate significantly from expectations. The hero must be prepared to adapt, to improvise, and to find meaning in the face of setbacks and disappointments. What if the hero's guidance is rejected? What if their attempts to do good are met with resistance or hostility? Does that invalidate their efforts, or is there still value in the attempt? LXVII, the seeds of the future. Sowing meaning in the next generation, the hero's journey often culminates not in personal glory, but in leaving a legacy not of accomplishments, but of actions and influence. This legacy is about the impact one has on others, the values instilled, and the inspiration provided to future generations. What would life have been like without the guidance and support of mentors? It is through the transmission of wisdom, experience, and ethical principles that the hero can continue to shape the world long after their own journey has ended. But is the desire to leave a legacy merely an excuse to escape the present, a way to avoid confronting the immediate challenges and responsibilities of life? Is it a selfish act, driven by a desire for recognition and remembrance, or is it a selfless act, aimed at ensuring a better future for those who come after? Does leaving a legacy perpetuate a potentially harmful cycle, or does it help prevent a bad ending? Influencing the youth requires a delicate balance, avoiding the pitfalls of imposing one's own values or manipulating their choices. The hero must act as a guide, offering wisdom and support, while empowering the next generation to forge their own path and discover their own unique purpose. This influence should be a genuine and selfless effort. How can the hero strike this balance, ensuring that their legacy is one of empowerment rather than control? And what if there is nothing the hero can do to stop coming destruction? LXVI, the hero's task. Adding to the tapestry despite all the discussion, there is no specific or prescribed way to add to the tapestry of human existence. The tapestry is vast and ever-changing, woven from countless threads of individual and collective experience. Every single action, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, contributes to the overall pattern. Every choice, every word, every gesture has the potential to shape the future. Therefore, it is not a matter of grand, heroic gestures, but of consistent, mindful action. It is not one singular grand act, but millions of minute ripples, each one contributing to the overall flow of events. The hero's task is simply to add their unique thread to the tapestry, weaving their own story into the larger narrative of humanity. Jung writes, "Even a life which has been devoted to conscious truth leaves behind it an incompleteness." We all of us hope that the name, the roof, the work will outlast us. How does the hero now feel about the journey they have undertaken? How do they act, think, and feel in the aftermath of their transformative experiences? Have they become more compassionate, more understanding, more resilient? Or have they been hardened by their trials, becoming cynical and disillusioned? The hero's true character is revealed not in their triumphs, but in their ability to integrate their experiences, to learn from their mistakes, and to continue striving towards a more meaningful existence. What will the hero do with all this experience? LXIX. Rebirth and choice. Now, how will the hero use everything they've learned throughout their journey? Will they become a guide, offering their wisdom and support to others? Will they serve as a beacon of hope, inspiring others to embark on their own transformative quests? Or will they simply disappear into the shadows, content to live a quiet, anonymous life? The choice is theirs, and it is a choice that will define the next chapter of their story. These choices are not black and white. There is a vast spectrum of possibilities, and the hero may choose to embrace a combination of roles, shifting their focus and priorities as circumstances dictate. The key is to remain true to their values, to act with integrity and compassion, and to continue striving towards a more meaningful existence, regardless of the path they choose. How can the hero navigate this complex landscape of choices, ensuring that their actions align with their deepest values and aspirations? How can all this experience guide their next steps? LXX. The final embark, there is no specific, predetermined answer, but the journey has prepared them for this moment, equipping them with the wisdom, resilience, and compassion needed to make an informed decision. The hero has faced their shadow, overcome countless obstacles, and integrated all aspects of their being. They have learned to embrace uncertainty, to find meaning in chaos, and to connect with others in meaningful ways. They have sown seeds of hope for the future. Remember all that it took to get here. The sacrifices, the struggles, the moments of doubt and despair. But also the triumphs, the breakthroughs, and the moments of profound connection. All of these experiences have shaped the hero into the person they are today, and they will serve as a guide as they navigate the next chapter of their story. Now, it is time to choose the next path, to embark on a new adventure, armed with the knowledge and experience gained along the way. What awaits the hero on this new journey? What new challenges will they face? And what new meaning will they discover? LXXI. The shattered mirror. When the hero cannot integrate, but what happens when the hero reaches the end of their quest and finds themselves unable to integrate the disparate aspects of their being? What if the shadow proves too powerful, the trauma too deep, or the wounds too irreparable? Is it always possible to achieve wholeness, or are some heroes destined to remain fragmented, forever haunted by the darkness they sought to overcome? Consider the tragic figure of Anakin Skywalker, whose inability to reconcile his inner conflict ultimately led to his descent into Darth Vader, a symbol of both immense power and profound self-destruction. There are countless examples, both real and fictional, of heroes who falter at the final hurdle, succumbing to their inner demons or being undone by external forces. From the fallen Greek heroes, undone by their own flaws, to historical figures whose promising trajectories were cut short by tragedy. The path to self-mastery is not always a guaranteed success. The annals of history are littered with cautionary tales of potential squandered, dreams unrealized, and noble intentions thwarted. Is this simply an unavoidable consequence of the human condition, or are there specific factors that predispose certain individuals to failure, even after demonstrating extraordinary courage and resilience? Perhaps the light cannot always win. Is there a final choice? It is important to acknowledge that the failure to integrate is not as uncommon as one might think. The heroic narrative often emphasizes triumph and transformation, but it often obscures the painful realities of those who struggle to overcome their inner battles. The pressure to conform to an idealized image of the hero can be immense, leading individuals to suppress their vulnerabilities and deny the darker aspects of their nature. This denial, however, only serves to amplify the power of the shadow, making integration all the more difficult, if not impossible. How can the hero navigate this perilous landscape, avoiding the pitfalls of denial and embracing the full spectrum of their being, even if it means confronting the possibility of failure? LXXII. The pitfalls of hubris. Is pride the true enemy? Is it possible that the true enemy of the hero is not some external force, but rather their own hubris, their excessive pride and belief in their own infallibility? This is a common flaw that extends beyond just heroic stories and into real life. The belief that one is somehow immune to the temptations and pitfalls that plague ordinary mortals can be a dangerous illusion, blinding the hero to their own limitations and making them vulnerable to manipulation and self-destruction. Hubris is the quality most likely to bring about ruin despite best intentions. Consider the story of Icarus, who, despite his father's warnings, flew too close to the sun, his wax wings melting and sending him plummeting to his death. Or consider the example of Macbeth, whose ambition and lust for power led him to commit unspeakable acts, ultimately resulting in his own demise. In each case, it was not external forces, but rather the hero's own inflated ego that led to their downfall. What specific circumstances or character traits predispose a hero to hubris, and how can they guard against this insidious trap? Is altruism a smokescreen for ego? But is being overly altruistic also an act of hubris, a subtle form of self-aggrandizement disguised as selfless service? Does the hero's desire to save the world stem from a genuine desire to alleviate suffering, or from a need to validate their own sense of importance and superiority? The line between genuine compassion and self-serving altruism can be blurry, and the hero must be vigilant in examining their own motivations, lest they fall prey to the seductive allure of pride. Perhaps the only way to fight pride is to avoid the need to be seen. And does pride always come before the fall? LXXI. Facing oblivion. When the hero chooses to disappear, what if the most selfless act a hero can perform is not to achieve glory or save the world, but simply to step aside, to relinquish their power and disappear into obscurity? What if the pursuit of heroism itself becomes a form of ego-driven ambition, blinding the hero to the needs of others and perpetuating a cycle of conflict and competition? Are there alternatives to the traditional heroic narrative, paths that prioritize humility, service, and the well-being of the collective? Perhaps the most heroic act is to remain unheard of. Consider the individual who quits a high-powered, lucrative job to care for their sick parents, sacrificing their own career aspirations for the sake of family. Or the artist who chooses to create works of beauty and inspiration without seeking fame or recognition, content to enrich the lives of those around them. These acts of quiet heroism may not capture the headlines or inspire epic tales, but they represent a profound commitment to ethical living and selfless service. Is obscurity a more ethical choice than glory, a way to avoid the corrupting influence of power and the seductive allure of ego? And what about the hero who becomes a villain? Is there a way back? What if it's not about what they do next, but about what they don't do? What if the most heroic act is to ensure someone else's success, to mentor and empower others to take their place on the stage of history? This requires a rare degree of selflessness and humility, a willingness to relinquish control and allow others to shine. But it can also be a deeply fulfilling path, one that allows the hero to leave a lasting legacy of empowerment and collaboration, rather than one of individual achievement. The hero can, in effect, become the orchestrator, not the instrument. LXXIV. The echo of silence. How one act can change time, but does heroism always have to be seen, to be recognized and celebrated in order to have value? What if true heroism lies in the silent acts of prevention, in the averted crises, and the potential disasters that never come to pass? What if the most significant contributions are those that are never acknowledged, the sacrifices made in the shadows that ensure the safety and well-being of others? Can heroism be measured in silence, in the absence of conflict and the preservation of peace? This entails a shift in perspective, from focusing on grand, dramatic gestures to appreciating the subtle, often invisible acts of kindness, compassion, and foresight that shape the course of events. It requires a deep understanding of the interconnectedness of all things, and the recognition that every action, no matter how small, has the potential to ripple outwards, creating waves of positive change. This can be difficult, because the impact of silence is not always immediately evident. Sometimes, the hero must act on faith, trusting that their actions will have a positive effect, even if they never see the results. Is this blind faith? It is of the utmost importance to realize that every little moment changes what comes next. This means every moment is precious, every choice carries weight, and every action has the potential to alter the course of history. What seems insignificant in the present can have profound consequences in the future, and the hero must be mindful of the ripple effect of their choices, both large and small. Every moment holds a choice, an opportunity to act with integrity, compassion, and foresight. It is through these countless small acts of heroism that the world is gradually transformed, one moment at a time. LXXV. The final choice, humility or hubris. Now what? How does the hero decide between the allure of hubris and the path of humility? The hero has reached the summit of their journey, gazed into the abyss, and emerged transformed. They stand at a crossroads, poised to either embrace their newfound power and influence or to relinquish it in favor of a more humble and selfless path. What will they choose? This decision will determine not only their own fate, but also the fate of those around them. All points explored must be expanded to allow for new, broader concepts to take hold in the mind. The hero can now do with the new knowledge and perspective. The answer has to be the opposite of pride, and it will be difficult to do. Instead, the hero must embrace humility, recognizing that their achievements are not solely their own, but rather the result of countless contributions from others, both living and dead. They must acknowledge their own limitations, their own vulnerabilities, and their own capacity for error. By embracing humility, the hero can avoid the pitfalls of hubris and create a lasting legacy of service, compassion, and empowerment. LXXVI. Synthesis. What now? And now how has all of it changed what is? How has this journey, with its trials, tribulations, and transformations, altered the hero's perception of reality and their place within it? Has it brought them closer to the grand cosmic purpose they sought, or has it revealed the futility of such pursuits? The answer lies not in a definitive conclusion, but in a continuous process of questioning, reflecting, and adapting to the ever-changing landscape of life. Reiterate everything that has been learned. Summarize that choice of hubris or humility will decide all. The hero now stands at the precipice of a new beginning, armed with the knowledge, experience, and wisdom gained along the way. But what they do with all of it will determine the ultimate meaning of their journey and whether they choose to embrace humility or succumb to the seductive allure of hubris. What is one ready to accept? This choice and its consequences will shape the next chapter of the hero's story, as well as the fate of those whose lives they touch. But what about the anti-hero? How is their death and rebirth different from that of the hero, and what can be learned from this alternative path? LXXVII. The trap of self-deception. Believing one's own myth, having faced death and emerged transformed, having stared into the abyss and found a new sense of purpose. Can the hero truly trust themselves, or has all the knowledge gained along the journey simply paved the way for a new, more insidious form of deception? Believing their own myth. It is a subtle, almost imperceptible shift, from embodying the heroic ideal to becoming the ideal, confusing the doing with the being. And this belief, this unwavering conviction in one's own righteousness, can quickly become the most treacherous trap of all, a gilded cage built upon the very virtues the hero sought to embody. For once the hero succumbs to the intoxicating allure of their own legend, their actions are no longer guided by genuine compassion or ethical considerations, but rather by a desperate need to maintain their carefully constructed image. Every decision, every interaction, becomes a calculated performance designed to reinforce the myth and perpetuate the illusion. This self-deception corrupts the very essence of their being, turning them into a hollow shell, a mere echo of the hero they once were, and their pursuit of truth now becomes a frantic attempt to validate their own inflated ego. But what happens when this carefully constructed facade begins to crumble, when the cracks in their armor become too wide to ignore? LXXVI. The echoes of Narcissus. Is the hero too in love with themselves? Furthermore, is there a fine line between self-love, a necessary component of self-acceptance and individuation, and the kind of narcissistic self-absorption that leads to hubris? Is it truly ethical for the hero to become so enamored with their own journey, so fixated on their own transformation, that they lose sight of the world around them, the needs of others, and the interconnectedness of all things? What happens to those who are closest to the hero, those who have supported them and believed in them, when they can no longer see past their own reflection, when their guidance becomes clouded by self-interest, and their actions are motivated by a thirst for adulation? Consider, for instance, the ancient Greek myth of Narcissus, a figure of extraordinary beauty who was cursed to fall in love with his own reflection. Unable to tear himself away from his own image, he eventually withered away and died, a tragic symbol of the dangers of self-obsession. But in our modern age, where social media platforms provide a constant stream of validation and celebrity worship has reached unprecedented levels, the echoes of Narcissus resonate even more powerfully. Influencers, reality stars, and even political leaders can easily become trapped in a cycle of self-promotion and image cultivation, prioritizing their own brand over genuine connection and meaningful contribution. What begins as harmless self-expression can quickly devolve into a relentless pursuit of likes, followers, and attention, blinding them to the needs and realities of those around them. LXXIX, the price of adulation. Is it the fall? The intoxicating drug of adulation can be a potent force, clouding judgment, distorting values, and ultimately leading to a catastrophic fall. For the true measure of a hero lies not in the destination they reach, the accolades they receive, or the power they wield, but rather in the integrity of the steps they take along the way. If the journey becomes tainted by self-serving motives, if the pursuit of glory overshadows the commitment to truth and justice, then even the most heroic figure can be undone, their legacy tarnished by the corrosive effects of hubris. Is such a fall recoverable? Is there such a thing as redemption for a hero who has lost their way, or are they destined to remain forever haunted by their past mistakes? Therefore, how must one respond when confronted with the adulation of others, when showered with praise and admiration? How can the hero navigate this perilous landscape, maintaining their humility, staying true to their values, and avoiding the seductive allure of self-importance? The key, perhaps, lies in recognizing that adulation is not an end in itself, but rather a tool, a means to amplify their message, to inspire others, and to effect positive change in the world. The ethical hero uses their influence to uplift and empower those around them, not to inflate their own ego or consolidate their power. But can even the most virtuous hero truly maintain their intentions, their true north, when buffeted by the winds of external forces? LXXX. The end of the hero's call. Will the lessons be learned? For as the hero's journey unfolds, external influences inevitably come into play, shaping their trajectory, testing their resolve, and challenging their values. The praise and criticism of others, the temptations of power and wealth, the shifting tides of public opinion, all these forces can subtly, or not so subtly, alter the hero's course, pulling them away from their true path and leading them down unforeseen avenues. How does the hero navigate this complex web of external influences, using them to shape their future while remaining true to their core principles? Indeed, with so many voices vying for their attention, so many agendas seeking to be advanced, can the hero truly guide others, offering wisdom and direction that is untainted by personal bias or self-interest? How can they maintain their integrity, their sense of purpose, when surrounded by a chorus of conflicting opinions and competing demands? Perhaps the answer lies not in resisting these external forces, but rather in embracing them, in recognizing that they are an integral part of the journey, a cosmic dance of influence and counter-influence that shapes the very fabric of reality. By understanding how these forces change our trajectory, the truest path is to simply be open to the flow. And how can this be done? LXXXI. The future embark, and so, is the hero's journey ever truly done? Does there come a point when the lessons have been fully learned, the challenges completely overcome, and the transformation definitively achieved? Or is it an ongoing process, a continuous cycle of death and rebirth, of shedding old skins and embracing new possibilities? Even after reaching what appears to be the final destination, the hero must still remain vigilant, adaptable, and open to the ever-changing currents of life. Therefore, as the journey continues, what has been learned, and how does it apply to the world? It is the summation of these lessons that will ultimately define the future embark, Embracing the cosmic dance is not an easy task, and it can be even harder to put into action. What does one do from here? LXXXII. Synthesis. You. And now, what are you willing to sacrifice? What aspects of yourself are you prepared to relinquish in order to fully embrace the totality of your being, to accept both the light and the darkness, the triumphs and the failures, the joys and the sorrows? For it is in this radical act of acceptance, in this willingness to surrender to the flow of life, that the journey to individuation truly begins. This is where you take the reins, because the journey to individuation has illustrated the interconnectedness of all things, the importance of humility, the transformative power of embracing the shadow, and the continuous cycle of death and rebirth. So does this mean that you are now whole, complete, and impervious to the challenges and temptations that lie ahead? Or does it mean something else entirely, something far more profound and unsettling? What awaits on the road ahead? And can these lessons be applied to a world that is increasingly fragmented, polarized, and seemingly on the brink of collapse? LXXXII. The illusion of completion. Why the journey never truly ends, but has the hero's quest for wholeness now come to an anticlimactic end? Having faced down inner demons, integrated the shadow, and achieved a hard-earned sense of self-acceptance, does the journey simply fade into the sunset, leaving the hero to bask in the glory of their transformation? What happens now? Such a notion is a dangerous illusion, a seductive mirage that can lull the hero into a false sense of security, blinding them to the ongoing nature of the journey and the ever-present potential for both growth and relapse. For the path of individuation is not a linear progression with a definitive endpoint, but rather a continuous cycle of self-discovery, challenge, and adaptation. Consider the myth of the hero who slays the dragon, rescues the princess, and saves the kingdom. The tale often ends there, with the hero lauded as a champion, celebrated for their bravery, and rewarded with riches and fame. But what happens after the fanfare fades, after the kingdom returns to normalcy, and after the hero is left to grapple with the weight of their newfound status? Does the hero simply rest on their laurels, content with their past achievements, or do they recognize that their journey is far from over, that new challenges await, and that the true test of their character lies in how they navigate the complexities of life beyond the battlefield? The myth often ends when the most interesting parts of the story are just beginning. After the hero's hard-fought transformation, having emerged from the crucible of experience with a newfound sense of purpose and clarity, they must still carry on with life, navigating the mundane realities of existence and facing new challenges and temptations. To do this ethically, to truly embody the values they have embraced, they cannot believe they are done, that they have reached some final destination, or that their journey is complete. For such a belief can lead to complacency, arrogance, and a detachment from the very principles that guided them along the way. To truly live ethically, the hero must acknowledge that their journey is ongoing, that there is always more to learn, more to understand, and more to contribute. And what happens when the hero stops moving forward? LXXXIV. The spiral path. Returning to the beginning with new eyes indeed, there is never a final step to take, no ultimate summit to conquer, and no definitive end to the process of self-discovery and growth. The journey is an ongoing one of peaks and valleys, of triumphs and setbacks, of moments of profound insight and periods of confusion and doubt. But it is in this very cyclicality, in this constant ebb and flow of experience, that the true richness and depth of the journey are revealed. Rather than viewing the challenges and setbacks as failures or regressions, they must be seen as opportunities for further learning, for deeper understanding, and for renewed commitment to the path of individuation. The spiral path invites the traveler to return to the same points, but from an elevated perspective. To truly understand the nature of the journey, it must be reframed as a spiral rather than a linear path, with each cycle building upon the lessons of the previous one, and leading to a deeper and more nuanced understanding of the self and the world. At the end of one journey, the starting point is often recognizable, like the base of a great mountain, but the climber is fundamentally different, transformed by the experiences and challenges they have faced along the way. And so, how can this knowledge be applied to future steps? The final act in one journey should be the starting point for a new one, not just for oneself, but also for others, creating a ripple effect of transformation and growth. But is this simply a matter of rinse and repeat, of endlessly cycling through the same patterns and challenges, or is it a process of evolution, of continually refining one's understanding and expanding one's capacity for compassion, wisdom, and ethical action? What does it mean to continually challenge oneself? To achieve this, one must connect with others, sharing their insights and experiences, learning from their perspectives, and building a community of support and shared exploration. One must continue to learn, seeking out new knowledge, challenging existing assumptions, and expanding their understanding of the world and their place within it. And one must continue to act, embodying their values in their daily lives, using their skills and talents to make a positive impact on the world, and advocating for justice, compassion, and sustainability. It is through this ongoing cycle of connection, learning, and action that the hero can truly fulfill their potential and contribute to the collective evolution of consciousness. One must also realize that not every new step forward is actually a level up, a guaranteed improvement or advancement. There will be struggles, defeats, and pains, moments of doubt and uncertainty, and times when the path ahead seems shrouded in darkness. But these challenges are not signs of failure, but rather integral parts of the cyclical process of the journey, opportunities to test one's resolve, to deepen one's understanding, and to emerge stronger, wiser, and more resilient. How, then, does one meet challenges with strength? LXXXV. The call to the future. The journey starts anew, therefore. How does the hero feel now, knowing that the journey isn't over, that there is no final destination, and that the challenges and responsibilities will continue to mount? Can they truly guide others, offering wisdom and direction that is both authentic and sustainable, or will they succumb to the weight of their own expectations, the demands of others, and the ever-present temptation to believe their own myth? Does this mean that one never gets to rest? Perhaps not in the conventional sense, but the rest comes in the deep satisfaction of aligning with one's purpose. The call to action must be refined, connecting it to the cyclical nature of the journey, and emphasizing the importance of ongoing commitment, ethical practices, and a willingness to embrace uncertainty. The hero must recognize that their power and influence are not ends in themselves, but rather tools to be wielded with wisdom, compassion, and a deep sense of responsibility. New paths must be forged, new alliances must be built, and new strategies must be developed to address the ever-changing challenges of the world. And the hero must remain vigilant, adaptable, and open to the possibility that their past may eventually return, that the demons they thought they had vanquished may resurface in new and unexpected forms. How must this power be now wielded, with no promise that things are better, no guarantee of success, and no assurance that the path ahead will be easy? What must the hero do now to prevent the rise of a new enemy, to protect the vulnerable, and to foster a more just and equitable world? Indeed, the ethical responsibility that comes with this journey, this knowledge, and this integration also comes with a burden, a profound cosmic awareness that can be both exhilarating and terrifying. To see the interconnectedness of all things, to understand the forces that shape reality, and to recognize the potential for both creation and destruction, is to bear a weight that can feel almost unbearable at times. But this awareness also brings with it a responsibility, a call to act in accordance with one's values, to use one's gifts and talents to make a positive difference in the world, and to inspire others to do the same. But what can be done knowing that you cannot interfere? The key lies in understanding that the hero's role is not to control the narrative, but rather to influence it, to nudge it in a more positive direction, and to empower others to become the heroes of their own stories. LXXXVI. The cycle of death and rebirth. An invitation, not a conclusion. Is it all truly worth it? This endless cycle of death and rebirth, of challenge and transformation, of responsibility and sacrifice. Is there any point in embarking on such a journey, knowing that it will never truly be over, that the struggles will continue, and that the rewards may be fleeting? This is the question that each individual must answer for themselves, and the answer will likely vary depending on their values, their priorities, and their understanding of the nature of existence. For the hero who has embraced the journey, who has faced their demons, integrated their shadow, and cultivated a deep sense of self-awareness, the answer is often a resounding yes. The hero has new power and insight to share with others, to guide them on their own journeys, to inspire them to overcome their challenges, and to empower them to create a more just and equitable world. The weight of these gifts must be met with acceptance, however, as there will be challenges. But this power also comes with a responsibility, a commitment to use one's influence wisely, to act ethically, and to remain vigilant against the temptations of power, fame, and self-deception. If the journey is never done, what can we truly expect to achieve? What lasting impact can we hope to make on the world? And how can we find meaning and purpose in the midst of such uncertainty? How will you face this truth? The journey has also revealed the interconnectedness of all things, the patterns and overlaps that connect individual experiences, and the shared challenges and triumphs that unite humanity. There is comfort and strength to be found in this cosmic connection, in the knowledge that you are not alone, that there are countless others sharing and living their own journeys, and that together you can create a more resilient, compassionate, and just world. You are never truly alone, and this is a profound source of hope and inspiration. LXXXVII. The embarker now. It is time for the audience to embark on their next journey, to take the lessons learned, the insights gained, and the inspiration received, and to apply them to their own lives, their own challenges, and their own dreams. But let us be clear. There is no promise of good, no guarantee of success, and no assurance that the path ahead will be easy. The journey comes with pain and loss, with doubt and uncertainty, and with the ever-present potential for failure. The most ethical thing the audience can do is to simply try, to put one foot in front of the other, to embrace the challenges, and to learn from the setbacks. It is in the act of trying, in the commitment to growth, and in the willingness to face one's fears, that the true meaning and purpose of the journey are revealed. And what does it mean to truly try? It means to act, to connect, to learn, and to create, even in the face of uncertainty, even when the odds seem stacked against you, and even when the path ahead is shrouded in darkness. LXXXVI. Final synthesis, therefore, the greatest journey you can embark on is a path you've already begun to tread, a path that has led you through darkness and light, through triumph and tragedy, and through countless moments of self-discovery and transformation. The only thing left to do is choose to continue, to embrace the challenges, to celebrate the triumphs, and to learn from the setbacks. Share with each other, support each other, and challenge each other to grow, to learn, and to become the best versions of themselves. Challenge the self, to question your assumptions, to expand your understanding, and to embrace the unknown. And continue to persevere through adversity, to remain committed to your values, and to make a positive impact on the world. For it is in this ongoing process of sharing, challenging, and continuing that the true magic of the journey is revealed. LXXXIX. The abyss of transformation. Choosing annihilation for a new dawn. What if the idea of death and rebirth has been passively received, rather than actively chosen? Perhaps the true essence of the heroic journey lies not in the events themselves, but in the hero's conscious decision to embrace them. The heroic choice isn't inevitable, but an intentional act where a new journey begins. But can annihilation truly be a choice? Consider the ethical implications of choosing self-sacrifice. Is it justifiable to choose one's own death, whether for oneself or for others? What is lost in this decision, and what must come before such a choice can even be contemplated? Does this self-imposed death extend beyond the physical realm, touching upon the very essence of the ego. Indeed, the concept of ego death arises. Is physical death also implied? XC. The anatomy of annihilation. Dissecting the moment of choice, picture the hero standing at a crossroads, poised between the fading light of the old self and the beckoning darkness of the unknown. This hero is in a liminal state. What must be left behind in this pivotal moment? Old identities, outdated beliefs, and limiting attachments. Is the hero truly prepared to relinquish these familiar comforts and step into the void? Perhaps this is where the core of the rebirth process takes root. To understand this transformative moment, it must be dissected into its key components: acceptance, release, and surrender. Acceptance of the necessity of change, a release of all that no longer serves, and a surrender to the unknown possibilities that lie ahead. What does this choice mean for the individual's cosmic alignment, their understanding of their place in the universe, and their acceptance of their individual task? The hero now has power and responsibility, but has the hero already paid the true cost? What if the heroic sacrifice is not about a glorious demise, but a peaceful retirement, a quiet retreat to a farm where the hero can tend to the land and reflect on their journey? What is the value in such an ending? Is it any less heroic to choose peace and solitude over endless conflict? However, the question remains: how ethical is it for the hero to walk away and let others carry the burden? Is this an act of selfish desire, or a selfless act for the greater good? XCI. Mythic echoes. The heroic choice across cultures' mythic narratives often focus on the physical exploits of heroes, their battles won, and their monsters slain. But what about the core emotional component, the internal struggles and sacrifices that drive these characters to such extraordinary feats? Can we find deeper meaning by shifting our focus to the ethical and social impacts of the hero's choices? Consider the myth of Jesus' sacrifice for humanity, the ultimate act of selfless love and devotion. But even in this powerful symbol, what are the true ethical and social impacts on the hero's loved ones, on those left behind to grapple with the consequences of such a profound sacrifice? Is the hero correct in choosing such a path, or are they flawed, driven by ego or a distorted sense of duty? Indeed, many heroic journeys are filled with characters that choose death. What is the true message of these tales? Is it to live, to die, or to simply change, to transform into something new? After a deep self-review, a process akin to Jung's active imagination, can the hero carve out a new path? XCII. The hero's atonement, highlighting the losses, illuminates the true weight of these choices. The hero is forever changed. How can the hero atone for what has been sacrificed, for the pain caused, and for the potential futures that have been forsaken? How can one make sense of a fate so difficult? The hero now faces a pivotal decision: to move towards death, clinging to the past and the identity they once held, or to embrace rebirth, stepping into the unknown with courage and vulnerability. How does the hero actively reconcile such powerful, opposing ideas, finding a way to honor both the past and the future? What's next? Is it their responsibility to pass on their knowledge, to guide others on their own transformative journeys, or is it their right to simply disappear, to fade into obscurity and leave the world to its own devices? XCI. The final legacy. A new path to share. What must the hero choose in the face of the abyss, to reach salvation, to find meaning and purpose in the aftermath of such profound transformation? Is it ethical to act on such a calling, whether it serves the audience or the hero, whether it leads to personal fulfillment or selfless service? As Jung writes about the calling to individuation, the shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. The journey is personal, but its impact can be universal. Does the hero atone for themselves, seeking personal redemption and inner peace, or do they atone for the audience, dedicating their remaining days to serving others and making the world a better place? To choose death and rebirth is to choose a path that only the hero can travel, a path that is uniquely tailored to their experiences, their values, and their potential. But how do they influence the path of others? How do they share their wisdom and inspire others to embrace their own heroic journeys? What is the best way to do so? XCIV. The journey has begun, the journey is never truly done, just as death can never truly exist on its own. There will always be life, and there will always be a chance to change, to grow, and to evolve. But what if the audience is unwilling to listen? What if they are resistant to change? And what if they choose to remain stuck in their old patterns and beliefs? Then what is the point of such a path? Does choosing the path of heroism imply that one must continue endlessly, striving for perfection, sacrificing everything for the greater good, or is there room for rest, for joy, and for personal fulfillment? This is a question that only the audience can answer, a question that invites them to reflect on their own values, their own priorities, and their own understanding of the heroic journey. But what if the heroic journey is not about grand gestures or extraordinary feats, but about small acts of kindness, of compassion, and of courage in the face of everyday challenges? All prior content must now link up to each other, as the last challenge has come. How will the information be used? What will the audience do with the knowledge they have gained, and how will they apply it to their own lives? But we're just scratching the surface of what's to come in the next sections. What we'll discover next is even more shocking than you can imagine. XCV. The trap of transcendence, escaping the world through spirituality, having chosen the path of death and rebirth. Does integration always equate to a hero changing the world? What if the hero, transformed, now only cares about the cosmos, existing in a state of detached awareness? Can the relentless pursuit of enlightenment actually disconnect the hero from the world and their responsibilities, morphing altruism into avoidance? Is transcendence a gift or another trap to fall into? The risks are considerable. Neglecting personal relationships, ignoring pressing social issues, and shirking ethical obligations can all be justified in the name of spiritual growth. The pursuit of enlightenment, initially intended to benefit others, can devolve into a selfish quest, pursued at the expense of those around them. Can transcendence become a gilded cage, trapping the hero in a realm of ethereal contemplation while the world below suffers? As Jung wrote, we cannot reach the dawn through perpetual immersion in the darkness. The paradox is clear. Can one truly help the world by turning away from it? Perhaps transcendence, then, is not the ultimate goal, but another layer in an unending cycle of transformation. Can we truly escape the world, or are we forever bound to it, responsible for the consequences of our actions, regardless of our level of spiritual attainment? If a doctor has attained enlightenment, does that mean they shouldn't help those that need saving? XCVI. The Hermit's Dilemma. IVS. Asian versus interconnection. Shifting from spiritual seeking to the archetype of the hermit, consider the solitary figure dwelling in a cave, meditating on the nature of reality. This archetype is often seen as a symbol of wisdom and enlightenment, but what happens to those who once sought the hermit's guidance? Was the time for guidance already completed? If the only thing that matters is the relationship with the cosmos, what happens to the people the hero used to mentor? Are they now on their own, adrift without their guide? Did the guide doom them by turning them loose, abandoning them to face challenges they are not yet equipped to handle? Or did they empower them with the tools to lead the way, fostering independence and self-reliance? The line between guidance and abandonment can be perilously thin. However, does guidance imply that one must be connected for life? This is where the hero, ironically, might actually harm others. This reinforces that integration is an unending task, an ever-evolving process of self-discovery and adaptation. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, will always test you, presenting new challenges and forcing you to confront your limitations. But it is ethical to just leave everything behind. XCVII. The ethical tightrope. Navigating responsibility and detachment, how can the hero reconcile their personal journey with the needs of the world around them? Is it possible to achieve a state of cosmic awareness while remaining engaged in earthly affairs? Can they still act, still contribute, despite the path they have chosen? Or is complete detachment the only way to truly reach enlightenment? How ethical is it to retreat completely from society, abandoning one's responsibilities and leaving others to shoulder the burdens? Can their journey guide others, offering a blueprint for transformation, or is it simply hubris, a self-aggrandizing display of spiritual prowess? Perhaps the answer lies in finding a balance between detachment and engagement, between personal growth and social responsibility. Must one always be a mentor, a leader, a beacon of hope? Or could they choose a different life, one of quiet contemplation and simple acts of service? Should they become a farmer, tilling the land and nurturing life? A teacher, imparting knowledge to eager minds? A traveler, exploring the world and sharing their experiences with others? How would this new path affect the world that was left behind? Does it even matter? If one's focus is the cosmos, is not earthly responsibility a distraction? XCVII. From cosmic awareness to earthly action. A new hero's task, how will the hard-won knowledge and transformative experiences from the journeys before be relevant to a new path? What tasks must the hero embrace in order to complete their true integration, to find a meaningful way to bridge the gap between cosmic awareness and earthly action? Is it possible, or even desirable, to completely sever the connection to the past? Must they still be a part of the community, contributing their skills and insights to the collective good? Is that a requirement, a moral imperative, or simply a choice, a matter of personal preference? Should the hero become a cosmic messenger, sharing their wisdom with the world, or is that too much weight to carry, a burden that would only hinder their own continued growth? The audience, too, must make a choice. Will they follow on this new journey, embracing the unknown with open minds and willing hearts? Does the audience even want guidance from a person who has walked away from everything, seemingly abandoning their former responsibilities? Are they still relatable, still worthy of trust and admiration? Or has their pursuit of transcendence rendered them irrelevant, out of touch with the struggles and concerns of everyday life? With so many paths forward, what is the correct one to take? The hero is nothing without their journey, a path built by taking steps forward and sometimes steps backward, learning from mistakes and adapting to changing circumstances. You cannot know how it ends, but what must the hero now choose? What task is now required? What challenge must be faced in order to continue the journey of integration? How does the hero embark, setting forth on this new path with courage, humility, and a willingness to embrace the unknown? But perhaps this hero must fail once more to attain their next goal. XCIX. Synthesis. The end is never the end. Is this all truly worth it? This endless cycle of death and rebirth, of transformation and integration? Challenge every assumption that has been previously made. Question every belief that has been taken for granted. Is the pursuit of heroism a noble calling, or a fool's errand, a never-ending quest for an unattainable ideal? Review all that has been to pave the way for what is to come. Reiterate one last time that this is all a choice. There is no inherent meaning, no preordained destiny, no cosmic plan that dictates our actions. The universe is indifferent, a vast and uncaring expanse that offers no guarantees and makes no promises. Yet, within this indifference lies the freedom to create our own meaning, to define our own purpose, to choose our own path. The universe has no sides to take, no favorites to reward, no enemies to punish. It simply watches as chaos and order create an unending dance, a perpetual cycle of destruction and creation, of death and rebirth. But does that mean you can't change the world, that your actions have no impact, that your choices are meaningless? No, it simply means it's up to you to take the first step, to embrace the unknown with courage and conviction, to create the change you wish to see in the world. Where does the embark begin? At what point does the hero set forth on this new journey? Does it begin with a grand gesture, a dramatic pronouncement, or a quiet act of self-reflection? Does it begin with a renewed sense of purpose, a burning desire to make a difference, or a simple willingness to embrace the unknown? The answer, of course, lies within you. See the final choice. Embark. What will you choose? Now, but we're just scratching the surface of what's to come in the next sections. What we'll discover next is even more shocking than you can imagine. CI. Signaling the shift. A moment of reflection as we draw near the end of our exploration. Let us pause for a moment of reflection. This journey through the psychology of heroic transformation has been complex, weaving together threads of mythology, psychology, and personal experience. We began by pondering transformation. Now what are we? Where will we go? The path we have traveled has offered diverse perspectives, each shedding light on the intricate process of death and rebirth of the self. Now, the question remains, how do we synthesize these insights and apply them to our own lives, accepting where we have been and where we may yet travel? What do we take from this journey into the labyrinth? CII. Thematic recap. The heroic spiral let us reiterate the core themes that have guided us. The heroic journey is not a linear progression, a simple A to B narrative. Instead, it is a continuous spiral, a dance of death and rebirth, integration and transformation. Just as the seasons turn, so too does the self continually evolve. The core ideals of understanding, cosmic awareness, and ego integration are all components of that journey. Key concepts such as the shadow, anima animus, the self, synchronicity, and the cosmic order are not isolated entities, but interconnected aspects of a larger whole. The relationship between self and shadow continues to change as the hero traverses the journey in an endless dance. We began our journey asking how these concepts apply to the hero, but how do these apply now to you, to us? The journey is a process of becoming, not a destination to be reached. There is no final form, no ultimate enlightenment that can be grasped and held forever. Instead, there is only the ongoing process of growth, adaptation, and transformation. One who claims to have reached the mountain summit often finds themselves at the foot of an even taller peak. CII, the callback. Ray, echoing the paradox of transformation, recall the initial paradox with which we began. True rebirth arises through death, not after it. Is this not a core theme throughout your life, one that has been repeated in countless iterations? Now, after exploring the depths of the psyche and the heights of the spirit, how does our understanding of this paradox evolve? That initial question takes on a more nuanced and profound significance, illuminated by the insights we have gained along the way. Like the snake shedding its skin, transformation is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process, a constant renewal of the self. It is never done, for true change arises through death, not after it. We examined shadow work, how one must befriend the darkness. We discussed integrating the anima and animus, the masculine and feminine. We talked about archetypes and how one can model themselves after heroes. The path to change has been carved, and now you have been asked to embark. CIV. The final insight. Embracing the great mystery. Consider this. The greatest act of courage is to surrender to the unknown, for it is in the abyss that we discover our true selves. This does not mean one must blindly trust every path, but that only by venturing forth can one truly know themselves. If you always take the safest path, will you ever truly be tested? This journey of transformation is not just for extraordinary individuals, for mythical heroes or legendary figures. It is a universal human quest, a search for meaning, purpose, and connection. We are all heroes, weaving our individual threads into the grand tapestry of existence, even if our only impact is the small lives that we touch. Let us cast our gaze upon the cosmos and know that even in our tiny lives we matter. We are sparks of divinity, fragments of a larger whole, forever bound together in a dance of creation and destruction. We are all part of the symphony, and thus the universe sings through us. CV. A forward look. The journey continues. The path of transformation extends far beyond this video. How you choose to embark upon it is entirely up to you. Will you choose to embrace the unknown, to confront your shadows, to integrate your anima and animus? Now, what do you choose? Know that you are always in control of your destiny. There is a vast ocean of knowledge to still discover. a mountain of work still yet to be done. May you consider and engage with other material, finding the path that speaks to your soul. May you use the lessons from this journey to build a better world, one small step at a time, one act of kindness at a time, one moment of self-awareness at a time, to live a better life. May you be the change that you wish to see in the world. CVI. Definitive closure. Thank you for joining me on this journey of self-discovery. May the road rise to meet you, and may the wind be always at your back.